Peace of the saints. Today's topic is, are you safe if the United States is to be hit with nuclear weapons? And I must say, we do seem to be in a time where we are inching ever near. This is because we have Donald Trump, the incompetent madman, at the helm of the most powerful army that ever has been. Donald Trump recently, as a result of his Twitter fingers, has positioned nuclear submarines closer to Russia. As you probably are aware, the United States has 750 military bases around the world, has extraordinary capacity, an ailing economy, a backward culture, and a lot of disharmony. None of those things, I think, will do well for us thriving in general, economically, militarily, and so on. But hey, who cares? Let's do it anyways. Donald Trump has recently offered an ultimatum in a conflict that should have nothing to do with the United States, except that the United States, with NATO as its instrument, has brought along a conflict. We call it the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump has issued an ultimatum saying that Russia has a number of days to end the war. We all know that in realpolitik, the only way to make sure that things happen is to exercise power. That is all that the powerful nations understand. Undoubtedly, Russia is not an aggressor, has not been. Even during the Soviet Union, I couldn't rightfully identify them as a military aggressor. Certainly on an ideological level, yes, they've pushed very far and very hard, only to be completely rolled up with the destruction of the Soviet Union, which, of course, that destruction first occurred within. As the Africans say, if there is no trouble without, there can be no trouble within. Now, the real question you should be asking yourselves as American citizens is, am I going to die? You should be asking, yes, are your children going to make it through a Trump administration? Why do you say that, Marquette? We know that the Russians have been bogged down in protracted warfare in Ukraine, of course, exhausting their conventional weapons and a great many of the lives of their young people. They've even resorted to mercenaries and as well foreign legionnaires. The North Koreans, even I trust, maybe even some Africans have filled their ranks. But the fact of the matter is, when you exhaust Russia's conventional military capacity, then of course they must resort to their other weapons of war. They're not just going to capitulate or roll over and die. So as we find that the Russian economy, of course, at some level is impacted by the very numerous sanctions. And of course, the war economy is driving them down in Ukraine because they're not extracting from Ukraine. It's not a colonial project, at least not yet. We have America challenging Russia. And the claim is that recently there has been an online social media war between Russia's former president and the American commander-in-chief. However, I don't think that is what has caused this repositioning of our nuclear assets and our delivery systems. Rather, it is undoubtedly Trump's ultimatum, which he has no right to make. And I constantly remind you of history, Minsk 1 and 2, the many agreements that occurred between NATO or Western powers and the Soviet Union, agreeing that NATO would not expand eastward and thereby gobble up a number of former Soviet satellite countries and position, as a result, the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance on the border of Russia, making them extremely vulnerable now to ground invasion and, of course, always to airstrikes. I cannot emphasize enough that Putin was well within his rights, and most importantly, he was wise to finally do something. I even challenged that he was late which certainly reflects the reality that he is not the monster he has been described as. And if he was, there should have been some kind of a blitzkrieg effort against Ukraine. Ukraine should have been hit harder and wiped off the face of the map more quickly. Yet we've seen him playing patty cake for some time, which, in my opinion, is quite an embarrassment to an entity such as Russia, which is supposed to be a world power. What you all should be asking yourselves is this: is Trump inching us toward nuclear catastrophe? Yes. Is he making all of the pump fakes and the real motions that indicate he wants a direct conflict with Russia? Absolutely. Would he look like a fool if he puts forward an ultimatum and the Russians do not stop fighting? 100%. So would he then have to do something if the Russians were to continue fighting? Well, surely. What are the options? Well, he could exercise options that have been exercised, such as arming the Ukrainians. But you'd have to ask yourself realistically, how many more Ukrainians are there to arm? How is conscription going over there? Does Ukraine have enough population? And for those who are forced into the Ukrainian ranks, do they have the expertise and the skill to operate advanced weapon systems? Probably not. So, with all of that being the case, let us consider, what are the realistic options? Well, the realistic options are for the allies, as they like to position themselves, right, as the moral high ground from World War II, for the Western powers to use their own troops or their own weapon systems directly. And Trump perhaps is trying to drive a conflict so that he can lie in the way that we see the Israelis lie and position America as the victor and the good guy and Russia as the aggressor. And with this ultimatum, that would give him cause to find deeper involvement in this Russia-Ukraine conflict, which was never a Russia-Ukraine conflict. It was always a Russia-America conflict, because we all know Ukraine has had a retrograde economy. They have a military that has not been battle tested. They had not a chance in going up against the Russians, who have superior numbers and battle experience and technology and economy and much else. And let us not forget that I've personally never met a Ukrainian who does not speak Russian, me personally. And I know a lot of Ukrainians, they all speak Russian. In fact, a lot of the places that have joined NATO or the EU also have significant numbers of Russian speakers, not because they're Russian people, but because the Soviet Union was highly impactful, ruled for a significant amount of time, and they offered real value to some of the countries that they controlled. Uzbekistan is an example of such, and there are many others. Anyways, what we need to consider now is, are you going to die? Are your kids going to make it out of elementary school? Well, let's take a look. I have a couple sources that I want to present to you. And as we go through, of course, let's use our brains for a bit. As we engage this conversation, we must concede that we have imperfect information. We also must concede that with the age of some of these articles or videos, or the age of the information that they use to construct the articles and videos, that there may have been new technology, no doubt, coming out. Firstly, let me acknowledge some of the folks who have supported the work. For this is a conversation probably no one else is having. If you would like to support the work, you can use the information below. You'll notice you've never seen me with a lower live view count than my last 3 live sessions, because the Google Corporation has in fact put an even stronger shadow ban on. They're sending the notification to almost no one, and they are throttling the speed to control the information that you have. I tell you, the revolution is upon us. The only question is, what are you doing? Shout out to Travis, comes in by Venmo. He writes, are you ever going to have Tyler Doucheberg back on to give out more awards? No, I don't think that I will, because folks didn't support that show. May I acknowledge Frank? He writes, I've not received a notification in over a week. It seems to be getting worse. YouTube is working overtime in its censorship efforts. Indeed. And so I ask you all, if you do support me, do support me. And as much as The reason that I've been pushing for this training center is because there will be no revolution in this country. There, in fact, will be no saving of you, the citizen, unless we have a change in the order. And it will not occur on television or on live stream because the government and big tech controls those platforms, and they will disappear any voice or any thinker that does not go along with their narrative. So I encourage you to help me build it faster. I think actually the link is not in the description. If one of the moderators who are online would drop the link to the training center, I will share it. If we had 1,000 people give $100, we would be a lot closer to getting this done and getting construction underway. $100. We have damn near 200,000 subscribers. So I'm saying just 1,000. That's not even, is that even 1%? That's not even 1%. That's 0.5%. If 0.5%, not even 1% of people give $100, we'd be able to get underway. Shout out to Dominic. He writes, supporting the call to action and the revolution. Real soldiers don't fight those they hate. They fight for those they want to protect. Ooh, this man be coming with the bizarres. I also acknowledge Miles writes, peace of the saints, Mr. Burton, keep preaching this truth. Oh, I wonder if it can be done. I tell you, I can't do it by myself. You guys have to support and you got to be a part of it. You see, because they can so easily remove my face from social media. They have all of the tools to do so. All of the tools. And they're exercising them. That's why you're not getting your notifications. May I acknowledge, shout out to Joshua, who just went to mdblabel.com. He just copped 2 of these. He got the black on black and he got the white with the black MDB label. You dig? These are damn near uniform hats, especially that black one with the red MDB label. Let's go ahead and get to this work, ladies and saints. Here we go. Now, buckle up because we have a serious conversation ahead. A conversation that you must heed. And please do know that I have already laid plans such that we can be prepared. This map shows the safest U.S. states to live in during a nuclear war. Now, it just shows you the low quality of journalism today because, number one, this same article has been reshared by so many news outlets. None of them did original research, nor did they bring on an expert to speak to this. They just assumed it was correct and reshared it a bunch of times. But also, with regards to language, consider this. They said U.S. states. Well, what does U.S. stand for? United States. So they said, which United States? Terrible English. Should have wrote which American states. And this is the problem, is that we have declining IQ across the planet Earth, and we have poor education, declining testosterone. The world is suffering. We do need a radical change. But anyways, please do pay attention. We have a serious conversation ahead, and take into consideration your future and your children's future as we speak. Shout out to Solo Dolo supporting the work. And I thank those of you who really rock with me. Thank you to those of you who are members. They say desperate times call for desperate measures. I assure you the times are desperate. If you cannot acknowledge it, you are a sleepwalker. We are talking about nuclear catastrophe here, folks, and I'm not doing it just for fun. If you track the topics that I don't do topics just for fun or because they're popular. I didn't cover the Diddy trial at all. Diddy trial, super popular, huge views. I didn't even acknowledge it. Why? Because it's nonsense and it's a distraction. So I don't cover things for fun. We're talking seriously. And look at this fool here. Look at this fool here. You're out of here, buddy. You're gone. Thank you. We don't need you. You have no value. Anyways. A Newsweek map shows the safest states to live in during a simulated nuclear attack on U.S. silo fields. Well, let us consider a couple things. Number one, it's simulated. Number two, there's a presumption that the attacker, A, would be Russia, and B, they would be attacking that which we've held out for them to attack. I'm going to repeat that. The assumption is that Russia is going to be the attacker. The second assumption is that they're going to attack that which we've held out for them to attack, which is the sponge concept, that we put our nuclear weaponry in the heart of the country where there is low population, much rural land. We've spaced out the weapons so that a significant portion of the Russian arsenal would be exhausted in trying to deplete our capacity. That's an assumption. But let's be real. If you were Putin and you know that button had to be pushed, of course you try to take out America's capacity to counterstrike, but surely you'd at least dedicate 1 or 2 nukes to, I don't know, New York City, maybe Washington, D.C., and maybe Texas and California, Silicon Valley, and then give me oil fields in Texas. At least, right? You could spare a little something for that. So know that there are a number of assumptions embedded in this. And as we have the most serious of conversations, one of survival, let us be very mindful that part of what we're reviewing is legitimate information. Some of it is outdated. Other aspects of it is, in fact, propaganda used to make you feel safe when there is very little safety. Now let's go. Let's talk about it. This is according to a scientific study, although experts have warned that, quote, nowhere is truly safe, end quote. That's a fact, because there are those places that will be eradicated upon the detonation. However, there are other places that will be eradicated from the things that result from the detonation. The heat, the wind, the brightness of the blast, literally blinding. The radiation traveling for miles, killing people and the land. And then what about the fact that emergency services will cease functioning? Then what about the food situation? Food insufficiency will be a euphemism. Starvation will be a common occurrence. What happens when men start to starve and there is no law and 911 cannot be called? Ooh, it's going to get dark, ladies and saints. I advise you to be prepared in advance. For those of you who are listening, you're a part of this thing of ours. If I know you to be a member, you are welcome on my land. You are welcome at the Burton Plantation. And you will need a safe haven, I promise you. And I have located the Burton Plantation very strategically, and you will see that as we go through this information. And as I said, if you'd like to actually support the work, you can do so using the information below. Share your questions, share your comments, share your thoughts, share your hopes, share your fears. Ties and tuition. Let's work. Global tensions. This is a euphemism, global tensions. Is it global tensions, or is it the same devil that has been problematic on the planet Earth? Those who are in the Western leadership class, the only demographic that has ever pushed the world toward world war or nuclear holocaust. The same devils, as they say, the usual suspects. The usual suspects. Huh? So they use this language that doesn't point to who's actually the problem. And I hope there are no fools in the chat saying, oh, it's the Jews. Like, no, I don't want to hear that. In fact, I would also like to note while we're having this conversation that you have a good number of white supremacists who are attempting to escape blame for everything that they've done and their ancestors have done by blaming the Jews. Well, side note, the Jews are white, and this is as clear as day. And secondly, we can't blame the Jews for everything. They tried to blame the transatlantic enslavement on the Jews. They try to blame everything on the Jews so that they can escape blame. And I would also like to say, as one who has studied World War II, particularly the fascist regime of Italy, which is paradigmatic fascism, and then the copycat, which is the Nationalsozialistisches Deutsches Arbeiterpartei. Yeah, them, the Nazis, they're not good guys. We hear a lot of supremacists coming on the internet with revisionist history suggesting that actually Adolf was a good guy and he was doing the world a solid. Well, maybe he was doing the world a solid, but I promise you, he was not a good guy. He was a psychotic racist, not only an anti-Semite, but in addition, he was anti-Slav. He was, in fact, anti anyone who is not the Aryan Superman, which did not even include all whites. He believed the blacks and others to be subhumans. He was a very vicious, devious, evil man. And had he won, this world would be far worse than it is. So do not be a fool. I see some of the low IQ blacks believing that they're going to join up with the white supremacists. They think that they're Nerd Fuentes' buddies. Extraordinary. It's only a representation of your idiocy and your lack of self-esteem, the whole of you. Anyways, now let's get back to this work. And shout out to the folks who actually support. Shout out to the Lady Saints. May I acknowledge Madam Quick. Shout out to D. Gets Racks. Writes, hey, Saint, should people vaccinate a newborn child? It depends on the vaccine and it depends on your country. For example, if I was in Tanzania, I would certainly use certain vaccines. When I was traveling in Southeast Africa, I recall seeing various diseases that are largely extinct in the developed or in the Western world. And so for that reason, you should take the vaccine. There are some things, for example, like polio, which are, very unfortunate, and you do need to take precaution against them in certain regions of the world. So these are the kind of things that my training center is going to give extensive education on. And where I am limited, we will bring in experts. For example, the idea of childbirth. Should a woman be standing? Should she be squatting? Should she be in water? Should she be on a hospital bed? Should you use a doctor, an OBGYN, a midwife? These are all critical questions. Circumcision or not circumcision, vaccine or not vaccine. These are all things that require education and perspective from various experts, and we should at least have a standard alternative. This is the education that will go on in the Training and Events Center. That's why I'm creating it. The question is, have you supported it? Not to the person who sent the super chat, but to all of you. I don't even have the link handy. But if one of my moderators does, I would be thankful if you would share it in the chat so that people can support, because we have work to do. And the fact of the matter is, imagine, this is one of the most basic things in human life, childbirth, and our government and our culture has not created a clear explanation of how to do this in a healthy way. I wonder why. I also wonder why population is declining. I wonder why 1 in 4 human beings has decided to be single for all of their life. I wonder why. Why do we have our prisons full? There's so many questions that should not be questions. It's by design, I tell you. Don't go to sleep. Wake up. Shout out to DZ. Just became a member. We welcome you warmly to this thing of ours. I acknowledge Mr. Golston writes, is it important to know a woman's sexual past? I find myself disgusted knowing anything. Is ignorance bliss? No, ignorance is not bliss. For example, in this very seat that I sit in, if it has been scheduled that there would be a nuclear strike that would arrive here and pinpoint where I am, but it's not occurring for a week, ignorance would not benefit me any. In fact, I would suffer greatly for my lack of knowledge. So ignorance is not bliss. It can be very dangerous. Ignorance can sometimes be bliss. So please do know that you'd be wise to have information. As the Master Sun Tzu states, prior information enables. Yes, it's called intelligence. Do you think that we have a central intelligence agency, that the British have MI6, that the Israelis have the Mossad, that the various countries of the world invest greatly into intelligence, which is information gathering? You'd be a fool to think that without information, you can make wise moves. No, your designs will all fail. So yes, you do need that information. However, you must take it maturely and deal with it appropriately. If you're dealing with a woman who's age, say 25 and older, I don't recommend it. But if you're dealing with a woman who are in her prime ages for fertility, and she's telling you that she has a very checkered background, you should take heed of it. At some level, you expect that her background will not be spotless, especially depending on the nation that you are in. So Be realistic, but also don't accept anything. Go for the best in life. This is what I compel you to do every day that you hear me speak, especially when I close with the creed of the assassin, which is to say, show the best of who you are and get what you deserve. Shout out to Hang Time, just became a member. Shout out to all of those who truly support. Said, had to put my pocketbook in alignment with my words by joining. Much respect. Shout out to those men who stand up, make their name known. Shout out to those men who pay what they owe. Global tensions, especially between the United States and Russia, which is to say the two nuclear superpowers, have resulted in much talk about nuclear war. We have mapped the impact of Russian nuclear bombs on U.S. cities and NATO countries and compared the effects of U.S. nuclear weapons with those of North Korea and Russia and China. Now, I want to alarm everyone that due to the nature of nuclear catastrophe, or shall we say nuclear winters, a euphemism, even if you're not in direct conflict with China, you are still in direct conflict with China. Why is that, Marquette? Well, you're still in direct conflict with China because if you explode a significant number of nuclear weapons, it very well may change the temperature of the global north, which would impact crops, the ability to produce food and to feed the populations. It will destroy much of the economies of the quote unquote developed world directly and indirectly. It will cause the word social unrest will not do the justice to describe what it will cause. It will return us back to the Stone Age, covered in blood and guts. So China, given its positioning, its location, it would have its economy adversely affected with the outbreak of significant nuclear war between Russia and the United States. And certainly the nuclear war would be significant because if it starts, it'll be significant. It's not a situation of it starts, one shot's fired, and then they say, oh, you know what, we're good. No, the United States is a strike first country, similar to Israel. And certainly it would be a strike back country. Russia, not as aggressive, but they know that their very survival hangs in the balance. Fear can make one aggressive. Survival can make one fight. So if a nuclear button is pushed on either side, we will see significant violence. Violence in it isn't even the word. Destruction. Death, massacre. And certainly, if only because of the ramifications of nuclear war, China will be adversely affected. And as much as that's the case, they have every good reason to try to prevent such a thing by whatever means necessary. They have very little reason to join such a conflict. So I say that to say, we should take that into our calculation when assessing how nuclear war might start and whom it would be between. I do not believe that it would be sensible for China and say China and Russia to join up as nuclear collaborators in a nuclear conflict against NATO and or the United States. I don't think that would happen. Now, let's continue. May I acknowledge via PayPal? Shout out to Frank. He writes, Russia has been recruiting Senegalese and Cameroonian nationals. I believe it wholeheartedly. Offering them up to 400,000 rubles per month to fight in Ukraine. I wish you gave us a conversion for that. He writes, that's about 5,000 USD. Okay, very good. That's a very significant amount of money for someone from a developing country, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. He writes, they're being placed on the front lines, of course. He writes, while Russians stay at camp, of course. Yeah. They're paying for crash dummies. I don't blame them. Certainly, you can't hate the Russians for prioritizing Russian blood. Shout out to Akash supporting the work, came in via PayPal. May I also acknowledge Gwensley. He writes, Will Baller alert this live when I get a chance? This is like watching Jordan in the finals, and they don't even know it. You see, there are those people who are wise. They see things before they happen. There are those people who can see what is happening as it is happening. Then there are the blind. We call them the masses. Oh, wow. Shout out to Iram. She writes, Assalamu alaikum. Sorry to email you, but I wanted to let you know that I'm on your live and I think I'm blocked as my super chats and comments are not seen and are not going through. I hope we can resolve this, inshallah. Wow, I'm very sorry to hear that. I certainly have not blocked you. I highly doubt my team has blocked you, as you've been a very positive supporter. We can certainly check on that if you'd be kind enough to send me your YouTube URL, and we can try to get that resolved. And also, I would like everyone to know that sometimes you guys believe that I'm censoring things or my team is censoring. This is not the case. If you see your comment disappear from below a video, you see your comment disappear from a live chat, or more likely not appear in the live chat, that is because Google suppresses certain words and concepts. That is an automation on behalf of the Google Corporation. That is not me. Anyways. Carrying on, shout out to Kane, supporting the work, came in via Venmo. He writes, the former Soviet states who became Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were accepted into NATO 2004. I've been to these places. The time to prepare has already passed. That's a fact. The east border of Estonia is less than 100 miles from St. Marquettisburg. Yes. Kane writes, the time to prepare has already passed. Yes. And so often human beings find themselves behind the times. So often. And I promise you, when things go left, there's no amount of praying that will help you. I promise you. Ask yourselves, from the first time you heard me, from the first year you heard me, I said we are in revolutionary times. Carrying on. Newsweek has looked at Scientific America's fallout maps of nuclear attack on missile silos in the United States heartland. And again, this presumes where Russia is going to attack. And this is in part propaganda to make you feel safe. You are not safe. I guarantee you, most of you are not safe because you live in a major city. You're not safe. Let's talk about it. The U.S. heartland, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, North Dakota. Most of you don't live there. That's because mostly no one lives there. And this fallout map was created to see which states would be least affected and therefore the safest, according to the simulation. It was a very kind simulation, isn't it? In an average case scenario, average, yes, an average nuclear attack. Now, how do you get an average? The word average with regards to mathematics usually results from looking at a data set. Well, with regards to nuclear attacks, there is no data set, and there's only one country that's ever used nuclear weaponry, the United States, which is ironic because to hear Israel tell it, the most dangerous nuclear country is Iran. Very interesting. Very interesting. Things are getting spooky. We see some folks are lying. Shout out to Marco, supporting the work, comes in via PayPal, writes, peace of the saints. Shout out to those men who stand up, make their name known. Shout out to those people who are really a part of this thing of ours. Back to the madness. In an average case scenario, the safest states would be Maine, terrible weather. New Hampshire, terrible weather. Vermont, terrible weather. Massachusetts, we're starting to get reasonable. People don't mind being in Massachusetts. Terrible weather. Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York. Please stop it. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, District of Columbia. Please stop it. Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. That's a lot of places to be safe now, isn't it? It's a lot of places. There's a lot of places. That sounds like a lot of places. Well, it sounds like this nuclear war thing ain't going to be too bad now, is it? Except they're lying. except that they are lying. Let us review real quick, if you don't mind. Let's use our brains one time. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Let's say of those first ones, I agree. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island will for sure probably be safe. And those places are wintry hellholes anyways. Connecticut as well, probably going to be safe. Sure, why not? Massachusetts, maybe not. Might not be safe. There are certain targets that are high-value targets, and they may be hit. Like, for example, Caltech in Pasadena, Harvard University in Massachusetts. Those are places to consider. University of California, Berkeley. Did America develop a bomb there? These are interesting places. Maybe there is intellectual capital there. Maybe there's infrastructure there. So those are places to be worrisome of. New York, this is going to get hit. I guarantee you. I would bet my life that New York City, not state, the city in particular, will be attacked in any scenario. And it must. It's the only sensible thing. It will be attacked. The reason that the article is suggesting that it won't is to stop you from panicking. I promise you, if the article said that New York City would be attacked, the article would be pulled and the news organization would be censored by the government. They'd be out of business. But here's the thing. I'm pretty sure the FBI probably reads over everything before it goes to print anyways. In fact, the FBI maybe is the one writing the articles themselves. Let's be real here. To overlook New York as a target would be the greatest of strategic blunders. It would be completely idiotic. There's no scenario under which New York City will not be attacked. That's a lie, blatant lie. And it's a lie so as to not cause panic and vacancy in our financial hub, not only of America and American capitalism, but global capitalism. Says New Jersey will be spared. Well, the parts of New Jersey that are proximate to New York City will not be spared. Pennsylvania, yeah, maybe. Delaware, yeah, for sure. Why not? Maryland, yeah, not the part of it that's close to DC. District of Columbia will be hit. There's just no doubt about it. Of course it's going to be hit. Virginia will be spared, except the part that's close to DC. West Virginia is irrelevant. Of course it's going to be safe. North Carolina, South Carolina, they will be safe. Atlanta, we're looking at Georgia. Atlanta is a reasonable target. Atlanta is the busiest airport on the planet Earth. There's a significant number of people and goods that transit through there. That would be a very strategic place to bomb. I'd want to hit it. Makes perfect sense. So yeah, Atlanta's a consideration. Absolutely. Now, I'm 3.5 hours away from Atlanta. We're good. 3.5 hours away from Atlanta. Very strategically placed along the eastern seaboard. Can get over to the continent of Africa if need be. Yeah, very strategic. But yeah, Atlanta will be a target for surezies. Biggest highest traffic airport in the world? Come on, man. Of course. It's not as high a target as DC. It's not as high a target as New York City. No. Not as high a target as Silicon Valley? No, but it's a target. Shout out to Mr. Gardner, writes, peace of the saints, only one keeping it real out here, as always. Yeah, that's why they got me shadow banned, and that's why the people who follow me are the realest of the real. The people who follow me are the ones who follow a leader, not a YouTuber, but a leader. Yeah, you wonder why those YouTubers you like are always cracking jokes and doing reaction videos. They don't talk about anything serious. They're scared. They rather just stack up money. They want to make this YouTube money from the ad rev and the super chats and all that good stuff. They're scared of losing their money. They don't care about losing their freedom, but damn it, they won't lose their money. They'll barter with their freedom, but losing money is not an option for them. Shout out to King Florio, writes, North Carolina has the largest base worldwide. Might be a consideration. Might be a consideration. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Carrying on. Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, all of those places have a chance. I agree. Other states that would be less affected include Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, California. Come on, bro. California, if it's a country unto itself, it would be a booming economy. California is for sure going to get hit. There's just no doubt about it, particularly probably Silicon Valley. Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Arkansas, and Illinois. Texas, I think those oil fields are a very serious strategic value. It powers a significant part of the American war machine and exports. Texas is going to get hit. There's no doubt about it. Let's be real here. It says this is based on the average radiation exposure calculated for each longitude and latitude point using a scale measure, blah, 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 blah. We're going to look at the map. The safest state's exposure ranges from 0.001, which is 1/1000th, to 0.5, which is 5/10. These are in units called grays. Compared to the states in the most danger, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota. The reason those places are in the most danger theoretically is because there's an assumption that the enemy will fall for the American sponge and attempt to destroy our capability, which is to say they're going to try to attack our nuclear weapons. May I acknowledge by air, by land, respectful saint, I've been holding a grudge against you since you suggested that Trump nuke China. He writes, also, I don't understand why YouTube shows us commercials, even though you say you are not monetized. Oh, I bet you don't understand a lot of things that the Google Corporation does. That's the problem, is that the viewing public does not understand that, number one, Google is a corporation, which means for profit. It's not a nonprofit, it's for profit. Just like if you send a super chat, you send $10, which is what you did. You send $10, Google takes $3, which remaining is $7. And then Uncle Sam will take $2, which say the United States government through taxation. And the content creator, in this case, Marquette Devon Burton, would be experiencing a remaining $5, approximately half of what you sent, because you don't understand the Google Corporation, as you've clarified in your super chat. And I agree, you don't understand. They're for profit. So everything they do is for profit. The ads run for profit. The super chats for profit. Do you understand now? Do you understand now? Is there anyone in the live chat that understands? Can someone verify that they comprehend the words that have just come out of my mouth, please? Can someone please confirm that they've understood? It's called as a teacher, it's called a check for understanding, to make sure that you're not just speaking in vain, wasting everyone's time. Make sure that there is some learning going on. Did anyone understand? I'll wait. Okay, there we go. Someone understood. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. You're welcome. Glad you guys understood. Now, carrying on. In the worst case scenario, the safest states would be Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York. Imagine how ridiculous the article is when it says that New York is among the safest places. This is a blatant lie, and it really spits in all of our faces. Really, it does. There's just no way in hell such a sweet target would be ignored. What is the purpose of warfare? Murder. That is the purpose. Where would you get the greatest opportunity to murder? In this kind of a scenario, it'd be New York City. High density of population, people stacked on top of each other like animals. Of course you'd want it in New York City. Come on. Come on. It's unreal. It's unreal to lie to someone like that. But let's take a look at this map. I'm going to enlarge this so that we can take a look-see. Here we go. So the darker parts are the deadlier parts of the United States of America. I repeat, the darker parts on this map are the deadlier parts. The yellow concentrations are the nuclear missile silos, which is to say, this is the nuclear arsenal of the United States of America. Apparently, those aspects of the silo that are public, so public that you and I citizens are discussing it right now. I trust the United States government has some tricks up their sleeve for surezies. They should, they must. But this may be where significant deposits of nuclear capacity is located. That being the case, as you get farther away from these three yellow hotspots, it is less deadly. Oh, and by the way, boo-hoo to Mexico and Canada, because even though they didn't start it, they are being drugged down in the abyss. Isn't that a pity? Looking at this map, it would appear that the places that are farther away from those silos are less affected. But this would presume exclusively that Russia has decided only to attack our nuclear capacity and decided to allow the American political leadership concentrated here in the Northeast, that is our federal leadership, allow them to just get by scot-free. And as well, that they would allow our financial capital to get by scot-free. And as well, that they would not land a direct attack on any of our fuel economy, our fossil fuels that allow our military machine to operate. And they'd also somehow bypass California, which is our tech hub, and of course, damn near a country-sized economy unto itself. Those assumptions are utterly ridiculous, and no sensible person would ever think that, unless you were putting out a fluff piece that was probably developed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the Central Intelligence Agency, perhaps both of them in league with one another. Shout out to Sire, right? Support, peace of the saints. Donald J. Trump has put America in the world's crosshairs. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And this does not account for any military bases or any forts or anything like that. It's a fairly simple model. Frankly, it's too simple. I like simplicity and oneness, as you know, but some things are too simple to take seriously. The nuclear war is a bit more complex than that, ladies and saints. I think you all know that. I think you all are aware of that. And shout out to those folks using the information below, because those who do understand the Google Corporation use the information below. I understand that some folks are not able, so you use the super chat feature, and I respect that. And I appreciate that support. Let's go ahead and get back after this work. Scenarios are based on a simulation with the detonation of 1 or 2 nuclear warheads with explosive yields equivalent to 100,000 tons of TNT, which is what is required to attack a missile silo. Now, they're talking about what is the minimum requirement. There could be much more. Several experts told Newsweek that the entire country, and indeed the world, would be heavily impacted. Extraordinary. That was a truism. Lets you know we have imbeciles writing articles. That needn't even be stated. It's so obvious. Of course, the world is going to be impacted. Quote, while those who live near military facilities, ICBM silos in the Midwest, or submarine bases along the coast might bear the most immediate and severe consequences of a nuclear attack. There's no question. Any nuclear war or weapons detonation would be bad for everyone. They're trained to say stupid things like that. But let me explain to you. Not only am I 3.5 hours from Atlanta and quite far from any other major city, tucked away into the country, also far enough from the coast of the United States such that I wouldn't be victim of hurricanes or a nuclear submarine attack and the ensuing unnatural, man-made, deadly, devastating tsunami that would occur. Very strategically positioned. And again, all of you all whom are members and whom I know, you are welcome to come this way. when things are getting ugly. This will be a haven for you, and I welcome each and every one of you. I will fit in as many of you as I can. It will not be a situation like in Houston when you had that mega church that would not allow the citizens of Houston, the parishioners of that church, to come in and be saved from that. What was it, a hurricane? I forget what it was, but that's when I knew that Christianity in America is lost. And that church continued to operate after that. It should have been shut down, and that preacher should have been hung, because there's no way in hell that those people who were suffering in those floods, and it seemed like biblical floods almost, those people who were suffering in those floods deserve to die like that, deserve to be turned away when you could have opened your church. And the people that were around that church were clearly the people from the community, probably the ones who attended because it's a mega church. Come on now. That's disgusting. You see, he was turning away people who have paid him tithes their whole life. The grandmama then paid tithes to that church, and he turned them away. It burns me up. It disgusts me. Now you say, Marquette, will you be accepting? Yeah, Joel Osteen. You're damn right. That's who it was. That plastic sumbitch. Now you guys say, Marquette, will you accept everyone who comes to the plantation? Hell nah. I ain't Joel Osteen, and I ain't Jesus, and I ain't running a church. I will be accepting those who are a part of the SAS and members. That's it. That's it. You got an open invitation. And anyone who's been a part of the SAS and can attest, anytime I have events, I open my homes to you. Wherever the home has been, I've opened my homes to you. Many of you, especially those of you who are confirmed, those of you who are executives, you've slept at my home. And of course, you'll be welcome when there is need. That is why we have friends and family. That is why we built this thing of ours as a haven. But that Joel Osteen stuff, disgusting. But it only underlines what I've been telling you for a long time. You got to be a part of something. Because when things get ugly, you need to be a part of something. Because I promise you, there will come a time where you dial 911 and nobody picks up. There will come a time when jamming devices knock out cell phone signal and electricity, and you cannot even dial 911, which is why I always tell you, it's important to live among those like you in tribes. That is the natural way for human beings to live. Come on now. Shout out to Master Lord writes, overstood. It's the big homie in a real way. Acknowledge none of the above 101 writes, honest question. Do you find it strange that some news outlets are running subscription models? Where's the shame? Well, frankly, the government should have a free news outlet, but we see that the government has failed on a number of basic services. I find it strange, for example, that commercial news outlets manage the presidential debates. Isn't that weird? Why does the government not manage an impartial, objective debate? Why is it up to paid, or excuse me, commercial sponsored news outlets to do that? It's really weird. Makes no sense whatsoever, but there's a lot of things like that. Also, why is it that the government, of all the things they make that they shouldn't make, of all the things they run that they shouldn't run, like public schools, why is it that the government doesn't make their own weapon, don't make their own weapons at a significant level? We got Lockheed and, Boeing and Raytheon and, General Dynamics and all these companies. And not only do they sell weapons to America, but they sell weapons to America's enemies and America's potential enemies. Extraordinary. But here's the kicker. We don't know who our enemies are. And here's the other kicker. Who's we? The people who run this country. They're not like you. They don't work 9 to 5s. They don't even work. They just steal your money. Look at Nancy Pelosi. She got rich making a salary in low 6 figures. Now she's $100 millionaire. Come on, stop it. It's insider trading. You and I, we're being scammed. Taxes going straight to Israel. What's left? You let them do this stuff to you. You can't even afford a house. They said that was the American dream, but you can't afford it. Come on now. And if you could afford it, then they're going to milk you for even greater taxes. They're going to double tax you on the purchase, tax you on the property tax you on the income, tax you on the capital gains when you sell. It's ludicrous. And then they want to claim that the Middle East is backwards. If you were a Middle Eastern citizen, one of the Khaliji, you wouldn't even pay property tax. You wouldn't even know what it is, because the idea of it is ridiculous. Come on now. And none of the above when you say, where is the shame? There's no shame in making money. There's no shame. Those are businesses. I expect them to make money. But what I don't expect is for the government to steal all of my money. What I don't expect is for the government not to give me a free option, which is not really free. It's taxpayer funded. But there's so many things that are scam-malicious. Dig this. Hey, blow your mind real quick. Public city buses come from taxpayer dollars, but you still have to pay to use the bus. What the? That's weird. I paid the taxes to create the buses and to pay the bus drivers and pay the police, but I still got to pay to ride the bus. Come on, man. It's ludicrous. All of this stuff is outrageous. We're like 50 years past when the revolution should have occurred. Come on, man. Shout out to G. Lopez, right? Says always paying tribute to the cause. Respect. I acknowledge Linovtak writes, nuclear war would be suicidal for all parties involved. But here's the thing, my boy. That's what they said about World War. World War II still occurred, didn't it? Yes. When you say all parties involved, who you talking about? No, it's going to be suicidal for more than that. The parties involved will be the European nations and the European nations because they're the warlike nations. But the sufferers will be all peoples of the earth. But there will be levels to the suffering. Yes, there will be levels. Oh, boy. Yes, ladies and saints. We are in the most beautiful of times and at a level the darkest of times. Shout out to Kene, he writes, internal mantra to keep in mind when interacting with anyone who's not a saint. The lying liar lieth, and still they lie their lies. Bro, I'm trying to tell you. Factual. Mouse acknowledge. Ramon writes, tuition, peace to saints. Shout out to Ramon, always supporting the work. He also did our new member orientation, and that's why I acknowledge every last one of you who are executives, you're leaders within this thing of ours. You put in work, you put in your volunteer hours. This is what builds community. I acknowledge Chris, who's also an executive. He writes, peace of the saints, great topic. Oh, it's a necessary topic, my boy. It's a necessary topic, I tell you. And we ain't even really got in deep yet. Huh? Shout out to Solo Dolo supporting the work, right? Spitting straight facts. Yes, indeed. I mean, the Democratic position is mentally ill. You can't even comprehend what they're trying to achieve. The Republican position is demonic. It's like they care about no one except their families and their rich buddies. Like the Republican Party is filled with imbeciles because 90% of the people in the Republican Party are voting for things that'll never benefit them because they're poor. It's extraordinary American politics. The double-headed dragon out here. I acknowledge Haidar writes, peace of the saints. Thank you for covering such topics. I find it fascinating and interesting that the average person overseas, especially taxi drivers, is more into politics than the average American. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Bro, you talk to a taxi driver in Syria, man, homie can run you down some significant history in politics. Absolutely. But one of the differences is that they've lived through it. We're reading about this stuff. They're the ones getting bombed. Like they are experiencing the history and the current events that we are reading about. And again, we see folks noting that they are not getting notifications. Yes. That's why I'm telling you, join patreon.com/the saint and the sinner. I am here for a limited time. Yes, I'm here for a limited time. This is how it's always worked in history. The truth tellers, they make us disappear. They kill us. They hang us. They do so many things. I'm only here for a limited time. Yes. Are you surprised? This is how it works in human society. The wicked, they rise up, they take control, and then they try to destroy any who would bring truth against them. For truth is a mighty sword. They don't want to face it. Yes. Are you surprised? Come on now. Anyways, may I acknowledge? None of the above writes, if I'm playing the Truman Simulator, I'm LA, Seattle, Houston, ATL, Houston, New York, Chicago, LV, and Miami. The silos will just be extra credit. Oh, listen, I'd probably take Miami out. That's not a meaningful target, truth be told. There's a significant number of people and a bit of wealth there, but it's not a geopolitically relevant target. I mean, tell me why Miami? Las Vegas, it is Sin City, but it's not an interesting place to bomb. Las Vegas has a very low population, actually. There's not much there. It's a service-based economy. So none of the critical industries are in Las Vegas. Chicago will probably get some damage just from the silos in the middle of the country being bombed. New York is a must do. Houston is a must do. ATL maybe. Seattle maybe. Some significant tech infrastructure there. Louisiana, what are you thinking about for oil? Is that what you're thinking, or is that LA? Yeah, maybe that's Los Angeles. Los Angeles, not as interesting as Silicon Valley. But, both are good ideas because California is a major economy for America and the world. Shout out to Alexander. He writes, peace of the saints, hope all is well. I'm glad to hear from you. Wishing you much health. Currently in a bulking phase at the gym to build more power in my boxing. Okay, very good. But also remember that power is going to come from your physiology and how you use it. So you might also want to highly invest in your technique to get that power, because when you put on that muscle with the bulking, it's going to slow you down, might adversely affect your cardio. Muscles are heavy, might adversely affect your speed. But I'm wishing you great success in becoming a killing machine. For in times like these, in a world such as this, every man must be a warrior. And thank you to all of those who support the good work and the good message. Yes, I appreciate you. Carrying on. Quote, nowhere is truly safe from fallout and other consequences like contamination of food and water supplies. Oh, yeah, that's a given. Absolutely, food and water supplies. Let us say the soil of the earth will be a given. And prolonged radiation exposure, of course, is going to take out another portion of people as well. Quote, administrations of both parties have long understood nuclear weapons are only for defense and deterrence. Please stop it. This is utter nonsense. Is that what they were doing when they hit the Japanese? I bet my life that they hit the Japanese with those nuclear weapons because they wanted to see what it do, baby. What it do, baby. That's why the Japanese were hit with those nuclear weapons. It was not a necessity. They want to see what it do. And they also want to establish America's position. And they did. But to suggest that nuclear weapons are for defense and deterrence, well, that's not the case. They're for aggression. Nuclear weapons would be a defensive mechanism in the hand of Iran, but that's why Iran's being attacked, because they don't have nuclear weapons. Anyways. Christian G. Appy, director of the Ellsberg Initiative for Peace and Democracy. So as soon as you have your think tank called Peace and Democracy, I know that you're a lying fool, because democracy in the West has been pushed as an ideology. Democracy is merely a form of government. It's a form of government. It's an option for carrying out the affairs of government, which is what? Compulsory education so that everyone's not dumb. Roads, bridges, protection of the polity, protection of the people, the basics, not all this extra stuff that America is doing around the world, all these foreign military bases. That is not the original mandate of government. And certainly democracy is not anything that needs to be exported. If we have a democracy and another country has a monarch or a dictatorship or an oligarchy or what have you, I mean, who cares? You only care because you're the American government and you would like to go in there and steal their resources through neocolonialism. You call it spreading democracy. Really, it's opening up markets, which means forcing your way in. Well, what's the way that Trump is engaging in neocolonialism? He's calling it a trade war, tariffs. What are tariffs about? Is that about improving the lives of the everyday American citizen? Hell nah. That's about ensuring that large corporations, multinational corporations, we should state, are able to put their products into foreign markets. The Ford motor car, the Apple iPhone, all these things can go into other countries so that the corporations make more money, not to improve the lives of citizens. So what you should be asking yourself is, why is it that Trump is acting as the chief salesman of this plutocracy as opposed to the leader and representative of the American people? Come on now. Anyways, Christian G. Appy told Newsweek, quote, even in a relatively small nuclear war, small, is there such thing as a small nuclear war? That's fascinating. This would cause a nuclear winter famine that would kill at least 1 billion people. That's billion with a B. Now, mind you, the word billion would suggest that imagine everyone in America is dead, and then we still have to kill 3 times more people to accumulate the number of deaths that would occur in a small, which is to say limited, nuclear war. That's extraordinary. He said it was morally repugnant to think about the safest place. Shut up. Thinking about survival is never morally repugnant, imbecile. Our political class is morally repugnant. But anyways, I've given you all some indication of the safer parts of the United States in the case that a nuclear catastrophe was to break out. And I had to utilize common sense to build a truer picture of that, because clearly this article that I just read from is propaganda. Because if you do that same Google search to find the answer as to what American cities are safest, you'll see the same article across 30 different news outlets. And that is the telltale sign, ladies and saints, that as Joseph Goebbels said, and he's the minister of propaganda and public enlightenment of the Third Reich, as he said, you can have a uniform message as long as you have a diversity of outlets, which is to say the same damn message said by a black person, a white person, a Chinese person, same damn message said by CNN, Fox News, Facebook, Twitter. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. You ever notice all the reports are the goddamn same? Yes, indeed. Shout out to none of the above writes, Miami has the most OF models. That's my only reason. Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Personal reasons. Hang Time 33 writes, food for thought. Why are the U.S. military installations worldwide? Why are there U.S. military installations worldwide, but no foreign military bases in the United States? Well, that's because we wouldn't allow it. No self-respecting country would allow you to have a military base on their land. Those are vassal states. Those are weak countries that allow such a thing. Of course, a strong country would never do that. A wise country would never do that. In fact, there's a gentleman named Osama bin Laden. If you look at some of his motivating issues, because he's a fascinating character that I recommend you take a look at. And the reason that I'm shadow banned is because I'm willing to speak on the truth as an American patriot. If you look at the history of this fellow, he actually was born into an aristocratic family. He was very well-to-do, traveled internationally as a young person, and was very much so integrated into various aspects of Western culture, despite being from a fairly religious royal family in Saudi Arabia. He did a great deal of philanthropic work and was certainly very much so a religious, spiritual man. He observed that his country was being victim of Western decadence and much else, all of the ills of the West. He wanted to turn that back, but the most offensive thing, among others, was the fact that there were American soldiers, which is to say paid killers, in the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia, where you have the holy sites of Mecca and Medina. And he thought that this was inappropriate, which it is, in fact, inappropriate, not only because that's someone's holy land, but because it's not America. And we should not be financing an international killing machine. We should finance our own defense such that we don't have to suffer aggressors. And these are some of the things that radicalized him and a whole host of others. But this would not be his whole story, for his training came from none other than the United States of America, the Central Intelligence Agency. So he was able to go from a humble cleric to a highly trained Islamic killer and organizer with the direct assistance through training, financing, weapons, of American agents, Central Intelligence, and more. And once he was off the leash, he could not be controlled by the American government. The US government has created many monsters that it's failed to control or put back on the leash. You may have heard of some of them: ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and more. Yes, that's right. Your tax dollars and your government have created the boogeymen that they say you should be scared of. And it is basic understandings like this, which is why I think and behave and speak in the way that I do. It is why I am compelled to not sit back and make the highly profitable reaction videos that you know your favorite content creators for, because I see that there are much bigger things at play. And I surmise that the other men who could speak on this are too cowardly or too stupid to do so, or maybe too immoral. And so it appears to be left to persons like me. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Carrying on. And thank you to the folks who have supported the work. I'd be fascinated to see someone new support, because it will take new people to stand up. It will take people doing new things for us to experience anything new and better. I'd like to see someone who's never supported say, hey, Marquette, today was my day. I wanted to support. But most importantly, I wanted to stand up and be counted. Here's that sponge thesis that the American government would like you to believe in. It does have some validity. However, it also is in part ludicrous. The idea that the enemy would not attack our centers of political life, our centers of population, and our centers of industry, be that fossil fuels or technology. Am I even live anymore? The live chat stopped. I don't see the live chat moving. I don't see the super chat coming in. I don't see it. Am I even live right now? I only have to ask because I am very seriously shadow banned, so I don't know what they will and won't do. So I'll take a pause for the cause right now. Okay, we are still live. Interesting. Okay, so everyone's speechless, huh? Guess I apologize. I won't get so serious on you guys. I won't get so serious. I know that people can't handle the truth. I know that. That's why I made the Book of Dark Truths course, because I know that the masses can't handle the truth. I apologize. I didn't want to scare anyone. My apologies. Just imagine if you guys were in Gaza. Goodness, you guys wouldn't make it. Y'all wouldn't make it. Shout out to the strong people of Palestine. Anyways, I acknowledge Omari comes in by Venmo. He writes, trying to stick to simplicity and oneness so I could use help deciding what to do. I am doing Uber FT. I hate it. Oh, I think full-time. Got it. Should I get a new job in QA or focus on learning cloud engineering to get a job in that field? Cloud engineering. Wishing you much luck. And if you hate what you're doing, I would advise you to lay a plan and start executing immediately with great vigor to get out of there like it's a burning house. Do not delay. Your life is important and time is extraordinarily valuable.
Sirens wail across.
Oh, yes. By the way, once we start playing this footage, if you'd be kind enough to confirm that you can hear it by populating an alpha 1 into the chat, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
The landscape. Red lights flash in military bases around the country. Someone has launched a barrage of nuclear missiles at the United States. They sail over New York City, blast past.
Now, mind you, I want you guys to find it funny, like I find it funny, that in this scenario, the scenario starts with the U.S. being attacked. It doesn't start with the U.S. attacking anyone. It starts with the U.S. being attacked. Now, if history is a teacher, we know that the United States and its ally, Israel, very aggressive. We're never the ones being attacked. We're always the ones attacking. Or if you just look at the history of nuclear warfare, you'd see in the one example, the United States is the aggressor. So how is it that the scenario starts with the United States being attacked, which is the most improbable thing when we have the largest, most well-funded army on Earth, and that's been true for the last half century. Yeah, yeah. So why would anyone attack us? You see how it's propaganda? You see how it doesn't even make basic sense? Come on, guys. It doesn't make basic sense. Shout to Gary writes, "Peace of the Saints. Support the big homie in a real way." Man, I might be the last one you got, to be honest with you. Everybody else just talking. You hear me? Everybody else ain't trying to do a damn thing. They just talking.
Past San Francisco and rocket away from DC. These major cities all seemed like they should have been key targets, but instead the missiles are headed.
Now you see, again, propaganda. So it's like, yeah, it went right past the cities where you live in. Don't worry about it. Seems like it should have been a major target, but it's not. These are all going to the middle of nowhere. You're completely safe. Our government is filled with geniuses.
To several unsuspecting states in the middle of the country, places where people thought they'd be safe. The United States' nuclear sponge is attracting the enemy nukes as planned. Unfortunately, anyone living in these states is about to be annihilated in a holocaust of nuclear explosions. There are 5 U.S. states that still house a large number of nuclear missile silos in a concentrated area. These states are what's known as a nuclear sponge. The question is, do you live as a nuclear is being targeted by Soviet nukes? In order to draw attention away from these areas, the Department of Defense.
Now you hear this? This is propaganda 101. You see, you may be looking at what you think is news. You may be listening to a podcaster whom you think is independent, but these people are all bought and paid for. These people are receiving big checks from the government. And the fact of the matter is that they're trying to keep you calm so that they can continue running their maneuvers. They can continue with business as usual. Come on. We can keep it going or we can stop it right here. I'm gonna let you guys decide. I feel like this is really good work. But I understand it's a serious topic. I totally understand. If you guys want me to keep it going, send it in here. If you're good, I totally understand. I totally get it. And I thank those of you who are here. And, really it's like watching, it's like watching the last. It's like knowing Jordan is near retirement and you don't know which game is the last game. You know what's trippy? And I want to share this with you guys because I know you're not thinking like this. Right now, you guys are the Germans in Nazi Germany with Hitler leading you, but you don't know that. You're just thinking like it's just the guy who's leading. He's just the guy leading right now. You don't know that generations beyond you will look at you like you're evil. And they'll wonder how you were so stupid to let it happen. That's who we are right now. Except we're more controlled than the Germans were. They say they had the Gestapo and the secret police. Oh, boy. They didn't have cameras everywhere. They didn't have every German walking around with a video recording and audio recording device. All my phones are bugged. Absolutely. Mine are actually bugged, but yours are also recording audio and video, which is to say the only difference between mine and yours is that there's somebody analyzing the audio and video from mine, like someone assigned to do so. So, yeah, we're controlled for sure. For sure. Come on now. I want you all to word. Somebody confirm if we're getting audio or not. Confirm if we're getting audio. Some people are saying I'm muted. While you guys are confirming that, audio's A1, fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. There's some peculiar level of delay on the live chat. Shout out to the bowlers. Shout out to Joshua. Comes in with a bowler alert. He writes, keep it going, sir. Haven't been able to support a super chat in years of supporting your channel. Excuse me, haven't been able to send a super chat in years of supporting your channel. Dang, that's crazy. That is crazy. On that note, I will be hiding in in Menifee, California when the nuclear war starts. Peace of the saints. Bruh, shout out to Menifee. Shout out to those men with whom we've shared different parts of our history. Yes, indeed. And shout out to those who've read the Black Box. They know what he's talking about. You dig? Highly recommend this book. This will probably give you some peace and some inspiration and a great deal of entertainment. You can get this on Amazon. Just type in Marquette Burton, The Black Box. Yes, indeedy. And you know what? The economy is so bad based on Joe Biden and then Donald Trump. So Joe Biden did a terrible job, and then Donald Trump's doing a terrible job. He has inflation so out of control that a baller alert isn't even a baller alert. Like a baller alert is just the basic amount you spend on dinner now. $50 doesn't mean what it used to mean. That's a shame. And that's all thank you to Donald Trump, Donald Jew Trump. Should we turn the baller alert to $100? Because $50, that's a normal dinner. That's not a Las Vegas dinner. That's like an average dinner. You go out with your old lady, you spent $50. $50 used to be something. I think we're going to have to make it $100 just to make it realistic, have meaning. It's insanity. Shout out to Sage, writes, keep it going, Saint. Peace of the saints. Sir, yes, sir. Shout out to Armando. He writes, please keep it going. Okay, let's work. This is an important topic for sure. Shout out to Eddie. He writes, today's the day I support. I just recently moved to the Yay area from San Bernardino. Shout out to my Cali boys. He writes, you are like a spiritual big brother. I just found your channel about 6 months ago. I've been binge watching all your videos and taking notes. I plan to purchase the product-based business course and eventually travel and join the brotherhood and leave the corporate cotton field. You got a good plan, my brother. And we welcome you warmly within this thing of ours, Eddie. And I do want to encourage you now that you're in the Yay area, tap in with the Bay Area section. Good brothers up there. You got Preston as the executive. He was just recently confirmed. Somebody we can all sign off on. Very honorable man. So you'll enjoy yourself and you'll benefit greatly. I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Melvin supporting the work. Appreciate you. He says he did not get a notification. We see that there has been a very strong trend of that. And it's not by accident, ladies and saints. Not at all. Yeah, no, I agree. We got to, okay, everyone, baller alert is officially at $100. because Trump and Biden have made $50 like mean nothing. And that's a shame that we can observe that without data within our lifetime. That's sad and crazy. That's sad and crazy. Shout out to Hang Time came back, right? It's redirection. Shout out to Solo Dolo says, keep it going. I acknowledge Mr. Rogers. It's Mr. Rogers' neighborhood out here. Shout out to Felix supporting the work. Good to see you again. Been a little while. And I don't know where my Muslima is at. She was supposed to send me the link to her YouTube so that I could try to make her visible. Shout out to Dylan, writes tuition. Was a pleasure to meet you in person while you were in Florida, Sass in Miami. Absolutely. Shout out to all the Saints. And that's one of those things where I come through. If I'm in your city and there's a section there, I definitely want to meet up with the section. In that particular situation, I took the Sass in Miami out to dinner. And the key is to, and that didn't cost anything. I don't do meet greets like, hey, pay me this money to come. No. It's love. Like we're within this same thing, this same family. Anyways, let's go ahead and get this work then.
Defense came up with an interesting idea. They hypothesized that if a large number of ICBM nukes were placed in the middle of the country, then the Soviet Union would have to target them first if they were to attack. Because if they didn't, the U.S. would be able to retaliate with nukes of their own. These missile sites were placed in rural areas so that the number of casualties would remain low. Forcing the Soviet Union to attack those rural areas would...
Okay, you notice he keeps mentioning the Soviet Union. We can all agree that YouTube was not around when the Soviet Union existed. So this plan was designed for an enemy, a foe that essentially ceased existing in like what? When did the Soviet Union fall apart? Was that like 89 or something like that? Who knows? Who cares, right? Because that was just a formality. When the wall came down, Berlin Wall, that was a formality. But basically a foe that stopped having meaning in the 1980s. So that being the case, is this true of modern Russia? Hell, was that theory even true of the Soviet Union? Theory. Dangerous.
Draw fire away from places like New York City, Washington, D.C., or any other densely populated part of the country. The remote nuclear sites were known as a nuclear sponge since they would absorb the missile fire from the enemy. The missile silos that originally made up the United States' nuclear sponge were deep underground and spaced far enough apart that the Soviet Union would need to commit a large percentage of its nuclear arsenal to destroy them. These nuclear launch sites were put in the plain states, so they could be launched northward, travel over the Arctic, and hit the Soviet Union on the other side of the planet. So, just to recap, a nuclear...
Now, I want you guys to ask yourself, I mean, this stuff is all just really just bonkers when you think about it. If all this money was dedicated to human progress instead of human death, what would our society look like today? It'd be sparkling, really, it would be. So many diseases solved if these trillions upon trillions were dedicated to human progress instead of human death. This is why I cannot suffer any fool to tell me that the Western societies are advanced or that they are civilized. This is not civilization. This is barbarism. To find the most efficient way to end life, that's barbarism. You know, someone had asked me earlier, they said, should the babies get vaccines? Which ones shouldn't they get? And I think it's quite fascinating that our government has not really given us great education around childbirth and that whole experience, which is to say the process of bringing into existence life. Yet there's been extraordinary efforts and investment in how to end life. Delivery systems, weapons, aerial intelligence, space wars, satellites, insanity. You cannot tell me that these people are civilized. Is it not barbarism if the method of murder is not blunt force trauma? If it's not being clubbed over the head, that means it's okay? No, sirree, Bob. Shout out to Ernest. He writes, didn't get a notification. Support the great work. Yeah, exactly. They're not sending out my notifications. What I will do moving forward is for you all who are members, I will post when I'm going live so that you guys can be here for the live stream. So if you're a member, I'll make sure that we post it in advance because the censorship and the sanctioning has reached an all-time high. Shout out to Craig. He writes, I have the notification on, but YouTube never notifies me that you, Marquette, are live. Peace to the saints. Exactly. Folks, they have the government and Google, they try to operate based on plausible deniability, but we see what they are doing. Hangtime 33 writes, I didn't get a notification either. Had to scroll through my subscribe channels to see you were live. Had you in the back. Yep. Shout out to Firstborn Last, writes, peace to the saints. Today is the day I support. And I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. And it's good to see you all. It's nice to know that we're reaching new people, because Google, if they had their way, there would be no truth. You would spend all of your time at home on adult content sites, playing video games, and watching goofy ass reaction videos. That's what you would do all day. And you'd be poor while you did all of it. Shout out to Mr. Santos, writes, peace to the saints. Appreciate you. Gentleman is consistent in support. Much respect.
Nuclear sponge is the section of the U.S. where large numbers of ICBM nuclear missiles are housed, in the hope that if an enemy ever did launch a nuclear attack, they would commit a large number of their missiles to destroy the nuclear sponge. This would hopefully spare major urban areas from total destruction at the expense of the people living within or anywhere near.
It's kind of funny. He shows the black guy. He's talking about people being blown to smithereens. Hey, bring in the black animation. Like, goddamn, bro. Come on, man.
The nuclear sponge. Right off the bat, you probably see some problems with the plan. And even when it was conceived during the Cold War, many people voiced their opposition to having nuclear silos in the middle of the country. Yet the Department of Defense built the nuclear silos anyway, and now updates is a huge waste of money. And sponge. Unfortunately, as we're about to explain, this is a huge waste of money, incredibly dangerous, and provides no real safety to anyone in the U.S. First and foremost, the U.S.'s main strategy for surviving a nuclear attack should be to never let it happen. It should be so far disregarding the nuclear sponge in the middle of the U.S. He's considering putting nuclear options asking as strategic nukes. Putin is but low yield.
Okay, so I want you all to focus on this differentiation right here between tactical and strategic. This stuff is always quite interesting.
Is a reality. The main reason we're talking about the nuclear sponge in the middle of the U.S. is that as Russia continues to suffer defeat after defeat in Ukraine, Putin has stated he's considering putting nuclear options on the table.
Okay, I want you guys to notice that. That's a reminder that this is propaganda. Now, let's be real. Has Russia been suffering defeat after defeat after defeat in Ukraine? That's a lie. Russians are on Ukrainian soil. Russia has Ukrainian territory in hand. Russia has not been suffering defeat after defeat. If that was the case, they would have already gone nuclear. So this is clearly a propaganda piece. Those are the clues that are dropped in. Good propaganda does not show its hand. Good propaganda puts an iron fist within a velvet glove. Good propaganda has the veneer of being balanced and objective, but they have to push out certain messages that Russia's weak, Russia's losing. And we know this is not the case. Ukraine can't beat Russia. It's literally impossible. I said that since before it even started. I said it at the very beginning when Putin was using the language of special military operation. I was the first one to say it against everyone else, against Biden, against his administration, and against all the YouTubers who were saying, oh, yeah, America's going to back it. Ukraine's going to win. It's like, come on, bro. It's not even realistic.
Weapons he's talking about are likely tactical nukes, which can vary in size from a few kilotons up to 50 kilotons. These low-yield nukes would still cause massive destruction and irradiate the surrounding area, but they're nowhere near as devastating as strategic nukes, which have yields of 1,000 kilotons or more. The problem is, if Putin starts launching
you might wonder, why are you laughing, Marquette? We're talking about nuclear holocaust. The reason that it's funny is because these devils are so deep into their violence that they have so many different euphemisms to describe their murder. This is what I mean. With the Eskimos, because they deal in snow so much, they have many words to describe snow, whereas Americans, we really don't, because snow is not so core to our existence. It's not something that's constantly blanketing our environment. And so these devils are talking about, tactical nukes and strategic nukes. when in reality, all they're really saying in layman terms is small bombs, big bombs. That's all they're saying, small versus big. Just the amount of death, a little bit of death, a lot of death. That's all they're saying. But they've dressed it up in this scientific knowledge or this scientific language, and using these lexical terms, they make it seem as though it's somehow something you can be detached from and talk about in a dry academic way, when really you're just discussing murder. And frankly, we should respect a George Bush, a Barack Obama, a Donald Trump no more than we would respect a serial killer who is imprisoned as we speak, because these are criminals, war criminals, Bibi Netanyahu and the rest of them.
Nukes in Ukraine, regardless of size, NATO will need to respond in some way. And let's be honest, Putin is not the most stable individual. So if he feels...
You hear this one all the time. Every time it's an opposition leader, he's mentally ill. He's not stable. He kills his own people. He's a dictator. What about Putin has been mentally ill? What about him has been unstable? What's one thing he's done? He's rolled back the LGBTQ in the country. He's promoting marriage and family life. The Russian Orthodox Church is respected. Like, what about him is so unstable? He's been really, in fact, very sheepish, the opposite of monstrous. He's been sheepish about the expansion of NATO. He actually waited until the very last minute to do something. I'd say he's really failed in that regard. And that is popular opinion.
Feels threatened by NATO, he could launch the entire Russian nuclear arsenal at Western countries. He's probably thinking at this point, if he can't win, no one can. This has put the US and NATO on high alert. As a result, the United States is dumping huge amounts of money into its military. Hundreds of...
Now, that was crazy. They basically tried to blame Putin for the military-industrial complex, right? So they stated that as a result of Putin being a madman, America has to dump a lot of money into military. It's like, word. Wasn't it Eisenhower who warned of the military-industrial complex? Someone fact check me. So if that was the case, then certainly we can't blame Putin, because it's been going on for a while. And in fact, I charge since World War II.
Billions of dollars have been put into the United States' nuclear weapons program in recent years. Some of this money has gone toward upgrading the nuclear sponge in the middle of the country, which makes zero sense, as you're about to find out. At the end of the 1950s, when the Cold War was in full swing and the Red Scare, sponge began Colorado, Wyoming, Titan, Minuteman, and people in the space to build launch control facilities that could launch missiles from several silos at any given time. By the 1990s, there were around 1,000 Minuteman silos and approximately 100 launch control facilities spread around Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, and North Dakota. However, there were several other reasons why these states made such a great nuclear sponge. The distance between them and Russia was short enough to hit Moscow, which is approximately 5,100 miles, while traveling over the North Pole.
Now, I want you guys to do a little bit of thinking with me. So they're talking about the reason that these particular American states were selected is because they are within reach of Moscow. Now, Moscow is not Russia's nuclear silo. Moscow is a highly populated city and also a seat of political power. So why all of a sudden, when we're looking at the targets in Russia, we're trying to hit the ones that are population centers, but there's the assumption that when Russia's trying to hit us, they're not trying to hit the cities that are population centers. Do you see how the logic is inconsistent in a way that tries to persuade you that you're safe when you're not safe? Come on, man. The only people that'll be truly safe in a nuclear catastrophe, meaning like they're good, are the American political class, because I'm sure they have the bomb shelters and they're going to know when the conflict starts, because they're going to be the one that starts it. So they'll all be safe. Kind of the same thing with Bibi Netanyahu escaping to Greece and the Israelis escaping to Cyprus when the heavy shelling starts going on against Iran. Come on.
Also, the distance from the coast would give these sites enough time to launch even if the enemy fired nukes from submarines along the coast. But the biggest motivator for building the missile silos in these 5 states was that they were sparsely populated, and if they were targeted, they would keep enemy
Why do they
missiles from
keep
hitting
repeating
major
that? We've heard
cities.
that so
For all
many
these
times.
reasons, if you live in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska,
Oh,
Montana,
bro,
or the
stop
solar space
repeating
does
that.
not hold any weight. The main reason why the nuclear sponge is so useless now is that if Russia were to attack, they have enough nukes to hit every nuclear silo and every major city many times over.
Okay, there you go. Duh. So what is this video really about? What is the propaganda focused on? The propaganda here is actually focused on, oh, the nuclear sponge is not going to work. We're vulnerable to attack. Many times over, they can attack all of our cities. So we have to spend more money on the military to build the Golden Dome for Donald Trump. We got to build the Golden Dome, ladies and saints. It's a sales pitch. It's an explanation as to why more of your tax dollars will be diverted from fixing the roads, improving the public schools, and creating a strong healthcare system. And they will instead be dedicated to a very hungry machine that is constructed solely to devour your tax base and all of human life and create infinite levels of carnage. That is what this video is about, ladies and saints. Donald Trump's Golden Dome. It is a sales message. It's a sales and marketing message for the military-industrial complex. They can never buy enough weapons. They can never put enough weapons among the stars in the universe. And no, we must always buy more. We are never at peace. We never have true world peace. We never have alliances. There's always violent military competition.
It's estimated that Russia has somewhere around 5,977 nuclear warheads at its disposal. The nuclear sponge obviously doesn't require 5,977 missiles to be destroyed. Therefore, if Russia really wanted to attack the U.S., they could fire several nukes at each of the 5 states where the ICBMs are located and still send several thousand other missiles to hit all major cities in the U.S.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, it said major cities. So if you're sitting at home watching this, you're in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, places like that, Houston, Atlanta. You ain't safe, my boy. You ain't safe. Now, I tell you what, the town that I'm in, it's small enough that if I wanted to, I could probably get it renamed to, Marquetta. Is that small? I'm good strategically, right? Come on now. May I acknowledge via Venmo? Shout out to Emmanuel, writes, tuition came in via Venmo. Appreciate you. I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Mr. Gardner. He writes, peace of the saints. You have truly changed my perspective on the world for the better. Thank you, Saint. Your analysis on these important topics is unmatched. I appreciate you. You see, even when you have the people who have the information, folks like Scott Ritter and the Shaheed Bolson, smart guys, but their emotions make their interpretation inaccurate. It's kind of crazy. And that's what kind of hurts my heart when I listen to them every now and then. But anyways, may I also acknowledge, shout out to Trayvon, who just became, shout out to Mr. Chima, who just became a member at patreon.com/The Saint in the Center. May I also acknowledge Trayvon, who just got the Big Game Conference, which talks about everything from approach. So selecting the woman, approaching her, how do you do it? What are the strategies? Maintaining the relationship, getting the upper hand in the relationship, when to have children, with what kind of woman to have children, the tips and tricks with marriage and children, obviously not legal marriage, but how to operate, how to prepare yourself for divorce at the beginning before you've done any of those things to make sure that you're bulletproof and you cannot be fleeced, cheated, robbed, or controlled by the United States government or some unruly broad. That is an extraordinary amount of game. It's a piece that I'm very proud of. Highly recommend that. You can get that at school.com, SKOOL.com/Marquette. Click classroom, and it's the Big Game Conference at the bottom. Shout out to Regina. She says the Amish are the smart ones. Oh yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I was just advising a young lady today. She had asked me, she said, hey, I'm thinking about getting a photo album so that we can record all of the memories that we have within the SAS. And, you just had the big game conference. We have Saints weekend coming up in December. And I said, learn how to garden. That would be a greater contribution. We have all this land, learn how to garden. That would be much better. And, that goes along with the Amish. They produce their own foods. They live in a simple way, simplicity and oneness. Carrying on.
Today, Russia and the US can launch nukes from submarines, which means that having a lot of stationary silos doesn't serve any advantage. And there's no reason to waste hundreds of nukes to destroy them.
That part.
The missile silos in the nuclear sponge of the US are highly visible and would definitely be easy targets. However, strategically, it doesn't make any sense for Vladimir Putin or anyone else to waste their nukes on them in the current age of warfare. This brings us to another huge problem for the nuclear sponge. The original intention.
Okay, so why are we still talking about the nuclear sponge if you just said the nuclear sponge is irrelevant? Okay, great. And also with nuclear submarines, and these are just fascinating technologies. Like the submarine itself is like a really evil thing when you think about it, because you've basically trapped human beings within a tin tube deep in the ocean, where there's extraordinary pounds of force from the water itself. There's not fresh air. And, if anything goes wrong at all, they're guaranteed to die. Like the survival rate is 0%. And you trap people in these inhumane, cramped circumstances on the off chance that we'd want to blow up to smithereens other human beings in a different part of the world. I mean, this stuff is just the barbarism and the psychotic evil of these people is just hard to comprehend. Really, it is. But anyways, from a strategic perspective, the idea that a submarine can be, at extraordinary depths in the ocean, undetectable, resurface, and then launch a nuclear payload is really scary, because what that essentially means, in case you're not tracking, is that we can have a scenario whereby America, so to speak, is destroyed, or vice versa. Russia is destroyed, yet either party could have nuclear weapons deep in the ocean in the form of submarines. They can resurface and attack. And so it's guaranteed that this is going to be an ugly situation. That it is impossible that either country would exercise gambit that would allow them to completely neutralize the enemy. No, you will not be able to attack the enemy and not be counterpunched. That is the great challenge. Shout out to Legion of Saints sharing the link for the big game conference. And shout out to the Saints who were there. I mean, I think it's a minimum of 12 hours of pure game-ism. Heavy.
Government willingly admits they built the nuclear sponge to sacrifice one part of the country to save another. But that's exactly what they did. Instead of all, there should be no reason for the U.S. to spend money updating it. A group of highly trained NORAD analysts at Joint Base LM points to ensure the United States is safe from nuclear strikes. It's the middle of the night, but the sun is still up. During the summer months, there are almost 24 hours of daylight. It seemed to be just another normal night when suddenly a red light started flashing on one of the consoles. The technician sitting near the station pushes their rolling chair over to the computer to get a better look at the flashing light. Their eyes open wide as they read the label. "I've got a nuclear launch indicator light going off over here," they yell. Everyone.
One thing I want you guys to take into account is that there's certain things that human beings, or shall I say human error, will be a major factor. Meaning that, number one, imagine we had a technology failing and it suggested that there was incoming nuclear attack. I mean, that would be just tragic, right? Just a mere technology failure. But the fact of the matter is, generally, there's not a single point of failure in tech and high tech, high risk systems. So in as much as that is the case, we have to know that there'd be a number of verifications that have to go on before we would react to what potentially could be a nuclear attack. In as much as that's the case, we also then, beyond the technical errors, we have to survive human errors. And undoubtedly, in a situation such as that, there will be human errors. Imagine the idea that you're one of the persons who are a linchpin between nuclear holocaust and not having nuclear holocaust, just being able to pass on the message of it's time to kill everything in sight. you might be like, oh, let me double check. Let me triple check. I'm not sure. What should we do? And, these conversations have a time limit. So there will be human error, and there'll probably be more human error on the side that is more human, which would be the Russian side. The American side is less human, more animal-like, more violent, more aggressive, and they'll be more inclined to do the most wicked thing thoughtlessly, because that's what we've seen in the track record of these United States.
Turns to look at them. Then a light at another station begins to blink, then another and another and another. Get the Secretary of Defense on the phone, a commander yells. Everyone scrambles to figure out exactly where the nukes are being fired from and where they're headed. The President of the United States is startled out of his slumber by a dozen Secret Service agents bursting into his bedroom. Sir,
can I just say something that's funny? It's messed up, but it's also kind of funny. I want you all to know that, let's just say, for example, you're in New York City, which is for sure going to get hit if there's a nuclear issue. For sure, you're going to die. I just want you to know you're going to die. But here's the funny thing. The American government may very well know that a nuclear payload is heading for you in New York, wherever you may be, Queens, what have you. You're going to die. You're in Queens, you are going to die. You played with the wrong one. So a nuclear payload is heading for you. The United States government is not going to tell you, because that would only, quote unquote, cause panic. And theoretically, there's nothing you can do to protect yourself. You're going to die. So they're not going to tell you. They're just going to wait for that nuclear payload to arrive and obliterate you, to incinerate you, to remove you and any remnant of you from the planet Earth. That's the funny thing, is that the government will know that you are about to be hit by a nuclear payload, and they will say nothing. You will not even have the time to make a prayer. You will not have a time granted to you to say goodbye to your loved ones, to kiss your children, to make love to your lady, to say anything to your mother or father. They'll have the time to tell you and to warn you, but they won't warn you. And you will die so quickly that you will not even have consciousness of what happened to you. You will not even know what happened to you. It will be a blink of an eye. One blink, you're here. The next blink, you are not even a memory. You, all that was you, the building that you were in, the clothes on your back, incinerated. Not even dust will remain. That is how you will end in a nuclear conflict. You will not even get the courtesy of the government saying, hey, you have 30 minutes of survival remaining. Make love to your woman. Tell your children you love them. Cherish it. You won't even get that. I promise you, you won't. They're going to just let your ass die.
We need to get you to the bunker immediately, the lead agent says. There's no time for the president to get dressed. He throws on a robe and is escorted deep underground, where the Secretary of Defense waits for him along with several other high-ranking generals. What's going on? The president asks. We just received word from NORAD, the Secretary of Defense responds. They're tracking several nuclear missiles headed toward our Minuteman silos in the Midwest. There's very little time for discussion. The generals lay their options out on the table, but the president must make a final decision. It's been about 10 minutes since the warning lights started flashing in NORAD, and whatever the path the president's going to choose, he has to choose it now. The president's predicament is made worse by the fact.
Now, this scenario is quite comical for a number of reasons. Number one, there's the assumption that there is choice. Then there's the additional assumption that the choice, which may or may not exist, is made by the president. All things that are improbable. In all likelihood, if a strike is made, it'll be by the United States. So we won't be responding to a strike. That's number one. But in this false scenario, if we were responding to a strike, there's already a protocol. So undoubtedly, this would not be a situation of making decisions. A protocol would immediately go into effect. Some of these aspects of the protocol are automated. And in as much as that's the case, like, this is all silliness and theater.
That there is no way to know if the sensors at NORAD are malfunctioning or if there are actually dozens of nukes rocketing toward the middle of the country.
See, you hear that that part that they just mentioned, and I at least appreciate them acknowledging that. Technical error will be a major consideration, and whether there is technical error or not, then there'll be human error invariably, because human beings will be saying, is this really happening? No way. Disbelief at something so extremely stupid and wicked occurring. Yeah, well, it's real life. You, as the young lady in the chat said, our fate is in the hands of imbeciles. But the real question is, well, how foolish are we to allow such a thing? How cowardly are we to allow such a thing? And that's the greater question. I understand why the people ruling want to rule, but what I fail to understand is why we allow them to rule. Shout out to Terrence, who just became a member at patreon.com/the saint and the sinner.
Therefore, the president has to use his best judgment and the data available to make a choice that could change the world forever. On the one hand, he could just wait and let the events unfolding play out. If the nukes really were launched, the middle of the country would be decimated and thousands of U.S. missiles would be obliterated. Coming into NORAD is wrong. The president could inadvertently start a nuclear war if he launches the think hard before coming to the table. General Lights were several new rockets that it had just developed. A series of solar flares scrambled very prematurely. He would have caused all-out war. Very war to the Department of Defense office acquired data that indicated 200 ICBMs were launched from the Soviet Union. The United States had launched 5 ICBM nukes at them. An officer in the Soviet Air Defense Force named Stanislav Petrov suspected this was a false alarm and double-checked the readings. Rather than immediately calling Yuri Andropov, the current dictator of the Soviet Union, and causing nuclear war to break out, Petrov waited for corroborating evidence. When none came, it was clear that the supposed missiles launched from the U.S. were just the result of a satellite malfunction. It's these types of scenarios that should make us nervous.
You see, so what he has just documented is that this has occurred before, which is to say technology failure. As one who's been in the software business, particularly with a hardware product, several hardware products, we know that this occurs. But what I've made you aware of is that when you have personalities that are war hawks, they are not inclined to ask, is this a technology malfunction? Am I reading this data wrong? They're inclined to believe the propaganda that they themselves have created, the idea that the Russians are monsters and much else. And so as a result, they're going to react quickly and viciously, even when there's no real provocation. And that is what we have to fear. Human wickedness and human error mixed together in one person. And I think that describes Donald Trump quite well. Stupidity and meanness, all rolled into one Cheeto-colored 80-year-old with false hair. Yes, indeedy. Shout out to those folks supporting the work. I appreciate you. May I acknowledge Beast. He writes, supporting this work. A few days ago, I sent a super chat to Nikki asking if he'd be down to collab with you. He responded saying, yeah, maybe, but I don't know who. Right. That's crazy. We know damn well that our mutual friend has let him know. In fact, our mutual friend didn't have to let him know. The fans have let him know, and the fans have probably told him to come at me many times. And then he asked our mutual friend about me. That we know what's up. Bro's playing dumb. So just let that be evidence to everyone that he don't want this smoke. And I don't blame him. Like, he'd be a fool to get into a career-ending spat.
When there are unstable dictators or presidents in control of nations that have nuclear weapons, all it would take is one malfunctioning computer or one mistaken reading to plunge the world into a nuclear.
That's ironic that he says that. He says when you have unstable dictators such as Trump. I mean, Trump is doing the classic things that dictators do. They're shutting down the press. We see that Trump is calling everything fake news, and he's marginalizing voices that don't agree, dissenting opinions. In addition to that, we saw that he's taken away email addresses from those who are in prestigious roles in international bodies, which indicates that he has control over the Google Corporation and as well many other tech giants. We saw that there were data provided on the jobs report, and he didn't like the data, which is to say the truth, and then he fired that person. This is dictator. This is dictatorship. And we know that he's a fairly cantankerous individual. And in as much as he's usually going at things based on the emotions created by his Twitter fingers, we should be concerned. Because bros stay on some BS, right? Oh, absolutely. Nick is certainly a skittle guzzler. Any man who claims to be a devout religious person and is not married, you're not a devout religious person. You are a homosexual who is using the cloak of religion. Jesse Lee Peterson is a homosexual using the cloak of religion. He's a senior citizen with no wife, no kids. Homosexual. Actually, I think he did have a bastard. I think he might have a bastard somewhere around, but he has no woman. And also, I interviewed the people that he has victimized, the males. Jesse Lee Peterson opened up like a home for boys and men, and he had them living in his house, and he was a predator. I interviewed several of them. People asked for the receipts. The receipts are the human beings that said, hey, Jesse Lee Peterson did fill in the blank to me. He's a pervert. Jesse Lee Peterson, I'll have you guys know, had me on his show. You guys will never know this. He had me on his show. He tried to play head games with someone who's intellectually superior, got obliterated in 5 seconds flat, and then he canceled the show. I didn't curse. I didn't raise my voice. Outsmarted him. He canceled the show. Ask him for that footage. In addition, Nerd Fuentes is a homosexual, claims to be a devout Catholic, yet he has no woman, has no children, claims to be a virgin. What kind of grown man is come on, he's gay. And the reason that they won't tell you that they're gay is because they think that their core audience will leave them. I wish it were true, but unfortunately it's not true. And I say that because you've even had actual out the closet homosexuals like Milo Yiannopoulos claim to be conservative, which is extraordinary. That's why I only follow Marquettism. I only teach Marquettism because everything else is corrupted. How can you be a gay conservative? This is an oxymoron. But the conservatives accepted him, which let me know that they are all corrupted. So these folks are gay. And that's why we are suffering so, because there's so many synagogues of Satan. And what I mean by that metaphor is that there's so many places where you're supposed to be able to get nourishment. You're supposed to find the good people huddled in the masjid or huddled in the mosque, in the temple, and the fill in the blank. But the demons are there. In your church, you have the homosexual is the choir director. The demons are there, not the good people. May I acknowledge Kendall supporting the work. Shout out to Mr. Chima. He writes, why isn't he locked up? Who's he? Who are we talking about? A lot of people need to be locked up. I'll tell you that right now. Carrying on.
Nuclear war. And in a nuclear war, there are no winners. More recently, a bigger problem had been brought up around having a large number of nuclear missile silos in a relatively concentrated area of the U.S. As the nuclear sponge is upgraded and more sophisticated launch systems are put in place, there have been concerns that vulnerabilities might allow hackers to access part of the nuclear weapons programming. This would obviously lead to a devastating series of events. If hackers ever gained access to the missiles from happening by infiltrating its software, might infiltrate is the stuff of nightmares. Or even a more pressing question is, why are huge amounts of money being funneled into an outdated Cold War nuclear, or even make the nuclear sponge more attractive? Or defense contractors tend to do a lot of shady things to ensure that the government keeps spending money on missile tech.
Now that was interesting how this video is claiming that the weapons contractors do shady things to get the government to pour money into their companies. Do the government people not do shady things? Are we leaving that part out? Yeah, I think we're leaving that part out. That's interesting. Very interesting. Curious. Mr. Chima says, why isn't he locked up? Oh, that's a very good question. Do you notice when men are victim of certain kinds of crimes, it's very, very hard to get justice or to get the government to take you seriously? You don't notice that men are victim in the family courts and the criminal courts? I'll give you an example. 1/3 of paternity cases, we find that it's false paternity, meaning paternity fraud. So if we have such high levels of paternity fraud, then why don't we have compulsory DNA testing at birth? Interesting, right? Yeah, I thought so. There's so many different examples we could give of how men are disadvantaged in the legal system. Imagine being a male going to the authorities, an adult male, saying that you have been victim of R to the A to the PE. Well, it's going to be hard. Yeah, pause. Anyways, carrying on. Shout out to Major Minded Soul Writes, Peace of the Saints, Sass in New England just finished our monthly meal and workout. back-to-back months, we've had new saints. The assassin is growing. That's a beautiful thing. And shout out to my leadership. Shout out to Major Mind and Soul being the executive there. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of our leaders who make this organization possible. You know, this is not about Marquette Devon Burton. This is about us. This is about the assassin. This is about all of us as men and women. So thank you all for your contributions.
Fair, Northrop Grumman isn't the only private business contracted by the U.S. government, and it's not the only company benefiting greatly from money being spent on unnecessary military technology. However, in 2018, Northrop Grumman contributed $5.6 million to specific campaigns to ensure candidates who support.
Yeah, of course. And APAC as well. You know, lobbying, maybe that itself should be illegal. Maybe we should stop the practice of lobbying. Yes. Maybe we should not allow for private campaign donations, or maybe we should not allow for campaign donations over a certain amount. These are interesting revolutionary ideas, Marquette. Fascinating. You're a genius. Shout out to Mackenzie. He writes, were the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki necessary, or was it another display of American brutality? Oh, it was definitely a display. And also, let's be real here. You get this extraordinary military tech, and you're the first to have it. A, you want to try it out, make sure it works. And B, you want to let everyone know that you got it and that it works. It's a great deterrent. Scares everyone half to death.
Their cause were elected. Northrop Grumman spends more money lobbying than any other defense contractor, and only slightly less than tech companies like Amazon and Facebook. These huge corporations pay unfathomable amounts of money to influence the laws being made and the way the U.S. government spends its funds. This, of course, is technically.
That's really interesting. Is he going to mention Israel at some point? APAC in particular? I don't think so.
Technically illegal, yet it still happens.
It's technically illegal. Is it technically illegal, or is it just illegal? I'm going to go with just illegal. But here's the thing. This is why culture is so important. And I talk about culture a lot, is because law, what's on the books, what's written, the letter of law, as they say, it doesn't matter. The spirit of law will be enforced based on whom the personnel is. And you men out there, oh, I tell you guys, you got to get to work because women are over enrolled in college. It's like 6-4 in favor of females. And with that being the case, increasingly, they will be the politicians. They will be the judges. They will be the lawyers. They'll be the prosecutors. How do you ever expect to win in family court? You won't, dummy. You have to start fixing things. They claim that it's not fair. No, we need girl power. You're right, ladies. It's not fair. Women are controlling, but they'll never fix that.
All the time. The craziest part is that whenever Congress tries to pass a bill to reduce the number of missiles in the nuclear sponge states, they're often met with resistance from representatives of those very states. You would think that politicians and constituents would no longer want nuclear weapons within their borders, especially if it's going to put them in danger of being blown up. However, this doesn't seem to be the case. In fact, politicians from North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana removed states want to keep the nukes there. The answer, once again, is money. The building, maintenance, and upgrading of nuclear silos and weapons creates an enormous amount of jobs and brings in a ton of money to the states. Many citizens living within the nuclear sponge work for the U.S. government or one of the defense contractors that maintain the missiles and their silos.
Okay, so maybe all of this stuff is really a joke, because if you have a high number of sites and they take a significant number of persons to maintain them, this means that the secret is spread among a number of people. Aha. Got you. So a lot of things are just jokes and make believe, right? Because if I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to break this down.
Therefore, if the government ever decided to remove the silos and get rid of the nuclear sponge in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, and North Dakota, it's clear that land-based missile silos serve no purpose and are outdated. Decided to remove the silos, it would not only save tons of money, but it would also
well, how about this? Not endlessly promoting war. That would also save tons of money, but apparently that's not even a consideration. And what you guys have to think about in the context of a quote unquote democracy or a republic is, which are the things that you cannot vote on? What are the things that are hugely important, but you never get to vote on them? Why don't you get to vote directly on property tax? I bet you if we voted on that, it would end ASAP. Why don't you get to vote on that? You don't get to vote on the things that actually matter to you. Extraordinary. The correct one writes, keep cooking. Saint Tuition, I appreciate you. Shout out to you. Good to see you again.
Issue a command to launch Western country that sends troops into Ukraine as part of a NATO operation.
So this was basically a claim by the former Russian president that if the NATO allies send their troops into Ukraine, that they would enact their nuclear doctrine, which is all nonsense because the Russians are super soft and everybody knows it. Even though the Western propaganda does not say that, they say that the Russians are monsters, but they're saying that not to reflect reality, but rather to scare the American population so that they can get the American population to yield to whatever they want. Because when you can scare people, then you can influence them. You get them to do anything. You scare them. Hey, the big bad muzzies, they're going to get you. Allah, yeah, those guys, they're going to get you. And so as a result, let us touch all of your private parts before you get on the airplane. Yeah, what's this? What's this, buddy? You know, you always get the super zesty guy at TSA. What you got in your pants? My privates, sir. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to pat you down, make sure you safe. Okay, bro. So for some sick reason, the American government has convinced all of you idiots that having a zesty fella at TSA touch you inappropriately is going to make you safer on the airplane. They've convinced you that allowing TSA government agents to go through your private effects and your undergarments will make you safer. This is the most stupidity I've ever heard of in my life. For example, if you look at, say, Atlanta Airport, which is the highest traffic airport on the planet Earth, which is quite a statement considering that India and China have billions of people. If one were a clever terrorist, they wouldn't be trying to hijack an airplane. They'd just blow up the airport. There's tons of people in there. It's the most strategic thing. It's highly populated with people densely packed. It's a phenomenal target. And not only would you get the value of a high loss of life, additionally, you would be able to disrupt significant numbers of systems in a global hub airport. It'd be a brilliant thing to do. So why is it that they're so concerned with the airplanes? Well, number one, because the airplane is the iconic fear symbol from the 9/11 inside job with the Israelis. In addition to that, the airplane is something that can be maneuvered and perhaps taken off course to land in some unfortunate places like DC and hit some of the political class. Because Lord knows they're mostly not flying commercial with you and I. It happens every once in a while when they're trying to like make it seem as though they're everyman, you know, when they're running for office. There's times I was, you know, you guys may not know, but I've had a significant life before YouTube. I know a number of politicians personally on a first name basis, which is to say they recognize me off of some, oh, hey, Marquette type shit. So obviously they don't want to be friends now that I've been speaking up on YouTube, but they know me well, a number of them, and a lot of presidential candidates, I might add. But anyways, I've went on flights with a number of them, semi-private, private, and commercial. And on the commercial flights, I'll have you guys know that what they'll do is they'll take commercial flights so that they, especially during election season, and they'll take them commercial just to make it seem like they're not like hurting the climate by flying private and make it seem like they're like an average person. And in some cases, I kid you not, the government will buy out the whole plane. Yeah, true story. You can see, if you guys don't have my Instagram, if one of the moderators would drop my Instagram, it's at Marquette Devon. In fact, it's the same as this Venmo right here. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see how bosses live. There's one particular politician. I don't want to say his name because we're kind of friends, at least last time I checked. But there's one particular politician. He's a former mayor and governor. I'm not going to name his name. I know a couple of former mayor and governors, actually 3 of them that fit that description. So hopefully you guys don't name this person. But yeah, the government bought out the entire commercial flight so that he and his buddies, his colleagues, collaborators, and friends could fly on the flight, and he could say that he flew commercial. This is a true story, and I know because I was on the flight. You can see the photo, and in the commercial photo, you can only see he and I on it. That's because the whole flight was empty by design. And I say that to say that your government is so wildly corrupt, and it does a lot of things just for optics, just to make things look a certain way, which are not, in fact, reflective of reality. And I would even charge that buying out a commercial flight is probably more problematic than flying a small private aircraft. And I've seen this with my own eyes. Carrying on.
alone in making those threats. Russia's current president, Vladimir Putin, has repeatedly claimed that he could deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, but his threats escalated in May due to comments made by various world leaders about the possibility of NATO troops entering Ukraine and how Ukraine uses the weapons that other nations provide it. His response was simple: Russia will be ready. Putin issued a statement claiming that troops in
This is all fear mongering because the Russians are weak and they're reactionary. They're not proactive, nor are they aggressive. By the way, there's the IG follow a boss, so you can see how real ones live. It's also different kind of content on there. But the Russians have already violated their own nuclear doctrine. They claimed that if the Russian motherland was attacked, they would engage nuclear weapons. And the fact of the matter is that they did not do so. And Russia has been attacked fairly deep inside of Russia, whether it was long-range missile or drones being utilized. And they basically allowed this to happen without keeping their word, which was yet another indication that the Russians are not to be feared and that they can be bullied, and they're willing to suffer in protracted warfare for some idea that they want to keep a positive view of them internationally. And they think that this is to their favor, but it's really to their detriment because they're playing the propaganda war, which they're losing because, as Putin himself admitted on an interview, the United States and Israel control the world's major outlets, not only traditional media, but as well big tech, which is the new media that consisting of Twitter, Facebook, and more. And so it's like, well, why even try to win the propaganda game when you cannot? And what's worse, you're also losing the real politics game because you are having your economy bled dry. You're showing your weapons tech, which you probably don't want to show. And you're also being bogged down in a war that is going to lead to a Pyrrhic victory. So this is just a bad decision making on the part of Putin, but it also may be a true reflection of their deficits. As I often quote, the Master Sun Tzu states that attack implies abundance. Defense implies lack. And the Russians have been on a defensive posture since before the Soviet Union ended.
The war is higher than it's been for decades. And if Russia were to strike against any member of NATO, that would inevitably lead to the United States entering the fray. Any strike on a NATO ally in its territory is considered a strike on all NATO allies, per artist of the Northern Hemisphere in nuclear war. All of that may leave you asking a question. How would a nuclear war affect you personally? Country is Russia, it would target every NATO member that had several types of submarine launch and potentially the Arctic Ocean to ensure its first missiles arrive in the United States as quickly.
Now, this is important the way it starts, because one thing that civilians are often not aware of is the layering of attacks. You know, military science, of course, is very advanced, and there is a methodology to the madness. America has not apparently figured out how to create a good healthcare system, but they have certainly figured out how to create a good killing machine. So has the Russians. So have the Russians, and that's largely a reaction to American militarism, or shall I say, European militarism. But anyways, of course, the first wave of attacks, they're going to want to disable your counter-strike capability, and there'll be various means that'll knock out communication systems. It'll knock out electrical grids, causing general unrest and chaos, and hopefully disable the ability of the military to communicate and to engage the weapons of war. Frankly, I don't ever see a scenario wherein Russia or China would be an aggressor. So I think this will be the other way around. But let's hear this bogus-ish anyways, because the methodology and the order of operations is correct. It's just that the perpetrator of these operations is not accurate.
As possible, the US would respond almost immediately. It would receive word of the launches almost as soon as they occur, thanks to its Defense Support Program satellites. Operated by the US military's Space Force, these satellites are in constant geosynchronous orbits around the world, with the data beamed from them triggering America's response. That response would be twofold. The United States maintains a stockpile of nuclear missiles on what the Union of Concerned Scientists calls hair trigger alert. This means those missiles are in a constant state of readiness, allowing the country's president to issue a command to launch within minutes. So before Russia's first volley of nukes even touches down in the United States, the US will have launched its hair-trigger missiles, in addition to preparing as many bases as possible to fire intercontinental ballistic missiles that will take around 30 minutes to arrive in Russia. The second response.
That 30 minutes that I was referring to is the amount of time that the American government could give you to say goodbye to your children and your parents and to make love to your old lady. The 30 minutes that you will not, in fact, be granted. Bro says, who will strike first? The West will strike first. There you go. Anyways, if you guys want to keep it going, we can keep it going. There's more. It's fairly interesting, at least to me. And it really gets to the specifics of how a war scenario would play out. Happy to go through, or you guys may have received your fill, and I totally understand. Your call. Peace to the saints. Looks like folks may want to keep the work going. May I acknowledge? Shout out to Kareem, been a little while, writes tuition. Good to see you. Shout out to my young boys, been here for a long time. I acknowledge Beast, writes peace to the saints. Sorry to go off topic. What did you think of Saddam Hussein as a leader? I don't think I've ever heard you talk about him before. I have mentioned him several times. He's a fascinating character. Saddam Hussein of the Ba'ath Party had a number of sons, including Uday, who apparently was a psychopath, which I think that, often these things are exaggerated. But in the case of his son, I don't think it was an exaggeration. Saddam deployed fairly ruthless methods to get into power, but during the time in which he did take power, he was fairly equitable to the factions that were in Iraq that were not dangerous. And it was necessary to have a quote unquote strong man in Iraq to hold them together. And unfortunately, during certain periods of development in a nation state, it is required to have such persons. And I think that he did a fairly good job. He brought in a level of modernity. He was very ambitious, and we saw that in his aggression toward Kuwait. And obviously his failed war against Iran. And that's when we really knew what Iran was about at that point. But when we saw what he was trying to do with Kuwait, it was a strategic move to enhance his country's economic base. And this is something that the Europeans do. But when others do it, apparently it's bad and immoral. And so the West, namely the United States, George Bush Sr., took exception to this. But Saddam was quite an operator. He was certainly a man of some conviction. I would not have considered him a Muslim leader. And I think for the most part, he was a favorable partner to the United States, and he was a part of a high-level chess game between the United States, Iran, and Iraq. And so I think at the end of the day, me as one who respects sovereignty, he should have been left in play. And when he was pulled out of play, we saw Iraq suffer as a result. And we've really seen instability in that region ever since. Thank you for the question. May I also acknowledge the correct one supporting the work. May I also acknowledge Kendall writes, keep the live going. Well, then let's go ahead and keep the live alive. I also acknowledge Sage supporting the work. I think this is Sage's second time coming in. Appreciate you. Shout out to Mr. Hemingway, writes, keep going, Saint. Well then, sir, yes, sir. Let's work.
Will be to activate the ground-based mid-course defense, or GMD system. This system is designed to destroy nuclear warheads when they're in their mid-course phase, meaning they'll be outside of the Earth's atmosphere. The system is perfectly placed to attempt to intercept the initial Russian launch. 40 ground-based interceptors are stationed at Fort Greely in Alaska, near where...
It's extraordinary. We've went to every inch of what is reachable by humankind. Alaska, the outer space, all of this just for death and destruction. One thing we can surely say is that there's going to be a level of failure with any system, whether it's due to the system's limitations or actual malfunctions within the system, especially these high-risk systems, which are infrequently operated and, of course, not properly tested. So we're going to see extraordinary levels of failure for both of the aforementioned reasons. And just as we've observed with David's sling and the Iron Dome in Israel, it was portrayed as impregnable, but we saw that those systems were fairly easily overwhelmed by Iran. And let us remember, Iran is a country that has both suffered economic sanction, but also sanctioning of technology transfer, and they were still very competitive. So there is no doubt that the United States will see technologies that it is unfamiliar with and could not anticipate that will be very effective. So our defenses will not be as strong as we're hoping. And our offensive weapons will probably not have the level of devastation that we would like. But being that the game is a nuclear game, whatever does get through on both sides will be fairly crippling. And in fact, I would challenge that this would be the war to end all wars. Yes. Following this, as Albert Einstein rightly predicted, that we will be fighting with sticks and stones after this one. And I think that it will show the cyclical nature of humanity as has been said in the good book, the first will be last and the last will be first. Actually, does it say that in the good book? My Bible thumpers, fact check me. But I say that to say with the West, that is to say the global North, largely destroyed, that would then leave a power vacuum. And it would leave the bulk of resources, manpower, uncontaminated land, and humans in the global South, which would give advantage to South America, Africa, and parts of Asia, and undoubtedly Australia, which would be very much so untouched. And that would allow them to rise up. And this will only show the repeat of human history of how civilizations rise and fall, rising because of their merit, and falling because of their excess.
Russia would likely launch its initial volley. But there's a problem. The GMD system is far from 100% effective. In scripted tests,
That's almost crazy how I said that before I played it.
Only reached an approximate 50% success rate, meaning at least half of Russia's initial volley of nuclear warheads will break through, and there will be more coming. Beyond the missiles launched from Rabachi, Russia will have shot hundreds of intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, that will take about 30 minutes to reach the American mainland. The US will have responded in kind, with its missiles also en route to Russia. As for you might not even know any of this is happening until you...
That part, that's the part I've been emphasizing. And for the gentleman who said ignorance is bliss, maybe you'll enjoy your 30 minutes. I'd hate it if you were at work for that 30 minutes. Your ass is at your 9 to 5 at Walmart as a greeter. Your goofy ass is just wasting your last 30 minutes of life. Me personally, I'd rather get a heads up. They're like, the government, like call you up like, is this the saint in the center? Yeah, bro, this is me. Okay, well, I just want to let you know, a-hole, we've been watching you for 5 years, bugging all your shit. And every time you come back in the country, there's a reason you get enhanced interrogation. Yeah, I know, bro. What is this call about? Well, nigga, you're going to die, okay? Yeah, turns out that the Russians, it's 30 minutes away. You're going to die. Just figured I ought to tell you, there's some level of integrity, enemy to enemy. Goodbye. It's all over for you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, my boy. At least I got a little bit of time to pile drive my old lady one last time and tell her that I love her, before I go out. That's just me, though. That's how I want to go out. You hear me? That's how I want to go out. Anyways, shout out to Madam Tay writes, thank you for your knowledge. Peace of the saints. I appreciate it. Shout out to the real ladies who support the work, those of integrity. Shout out to all the ladies who are tuning in. Shout out to the ones who support. Oh, yes. And if you haven't become a lady saint, feel free to DM me on Instagram at Marquette Devon or DM at the Lady Saints, and we'll make sure that you get connected. We'd love to have you as a formal part of this thing of ours. To all of you.
Start seeing the telltale streaks of nuclear missiles bearing down on the United States. About 10 minutes after the launches from Rabachi and its submarines, the first of the warheads will strike. However, the first missiles to arrive won't be traditional nuclear bombs. They'll be...
Now, this is really interesting. And this one, things are a little bit fun. If you're in a big city, this will be fun if you're anything like me. I mean, I like a bit of excitement.
Electromagnetic, or EMP, pulse weapons. The EMP warheads detonate at altitudes above major cities,
Boom!
With each detonation releasing gamma rays that ionize the molecules in the air.
Yeah, that sounded complex, right? EMPs, gamma rays, ionize the air. Well, what that essentially means is that your electronics are going to go berserk and stop working.
Positive ions and Compton electrons are produced, leading to a pulse of energy that also creates an exceptionally powerful electromagnetic field. All systems powered by electricity are at risk of shutting down immediately as a result of the pulse. Power grids, handheld devices, and even vehicles simply stop working.
Well, not only will the vehicle stop working, I mean, they may potentially crash and kill you, since your car is kind of at some level controlling itself nowadays, which I also think is a great hazard to our safety, our control, and our freedom. Shout out to Mr. Buck supporting the work. I appreciate you. Yes, indeed. And the worst part about it is that there have been times I've been driving. Now, of course, my car has a lot more technology than most people's car. But for example, I drive with one hand because I'm a super player, and that's how we were raised. Seat lean back, and you drive it with one hand. That's just how players do it. My car constantly like, put two hands on the wheel, put two hands on the wheel. If I look away, they're like, you're not looking at the road. Look at the road. I'm like, God damn it. Like, it's annoying. So it's doing too much controlling, driving, and manipulating. But if that complex electrical system were to go out or to fritz as I'm driving or as others are driving, there's no doubt in a high-speed scenario on a freeway in a crowded place, this would be fatal.
And worst of all, it wouldn't take many bombs to cause complete havoc in the United States. According to the Washington State Department of Health, US atmospheric tests in 1962 revealed just how far-reaching an EMP bomb's effects can be. The US detonated a 1.4 megaton explosive, all detonating at high altitudes to disrupt American electrical devices. Depending on where you are relative to the detonations, you'll likely see them in the skies. But the most obvious sign that something is wrong will be that your electronics stop working.
Now, here's one thing I want to remind you of again. This will probably happen first in Russia because America is always the aggressor, as is Israel. Another thing that you need to be mindful of is that being that you're not in a homogenous country, when you basically have the removal of the state, the United States population is somewhere in between 330 million or 360 million. We don't know because of the very high number of illegals. And also the American government is generally dishonest. With that being the case, we have to remember that we're in a heterogeneous society where we don't share values with one another. We don't share coloration, religion, etc. And so in a situation wherein the state retreats, which is to say look at this imbecile. See, we have devils here. We have devils, mentally ill people. Just too stupid to just go watch the original video. If you don't want the commentary, watch the original video. Just very low IQ people. But the fact of the matter is, if this were to occur in Russia, in a place where it's homogenous, they share religion, language, and race, meaning biological similarities, same phenotypes, they're not going to destroy each other. But the United States, where we are very homogenous and already distrustful, this will open up a very ugly can of worms whereby you'll have various already organized militia groups like the Proud Boys and the white supremacists and various other groups. What's the other one? Antifa and all these folks. They'll be creating havoc. They'll be murdering. They'll be R to the A to the P, INGing. They'll be doing all sorts of heinous things because the state, which is to say government control, has been reduced greatly as a result of the electrical system going down. Because in a country with this much land mass and this high a population, the government can only control by leveraging a significant layer of technology. They don't have the manpower to do such. So when that technology fails, the government will not be able to project power, and the true nature of the devils among us shall emerge. Just like that devil that was in our chat, just psychotic people. And their darkest desires will be taken on. And so that is why I urge you all, travel in tribes, make a practice, let there never be one saint.
Your smartphone short circuits, the power goes down, traffic lights stop working, and many vehicles, particularly those that rely on electrical systems to run, will start crashing. Worst of all, this will be a countrywide effect. Even if your smartphone manages to survive the initial blasts, the odds are that you won't be able to communicate with your loved ones.
Guaranteed.
That's the point. The EMP weapons shut down communication and hamper American military operations. It may even be able to prevent the launch of some nuclear weapons, though the hair-trigger warheads the US has on standby will have already started their journeys to Russia by the time the EMP electronic equipment, failing machineries fail, railway networks, and
so it's basically describing all of the residual effects, people dying in hospitals because the electricity goes down and all that the other stuff, people in nursing homes dying, babies in incubators and all kinds of things like that. Of course, there'll be significant panic. And this is when the real power that we possess will be returned to the forefront. This is when the importance of men will be ever so clear. And you will find the feminists cowering and praying that a strong man would protect them from the wicked men. But unfortunately, due to the behaviors of the feminists, some of the strong men may take wicked actions. Shout out to Jan Carlos writes, support, thanks for bringing this information and insight to us. You're very welcome, and I thank you for the support.
Right. The world around you may be eerily silent or filled with the panicked screams of hundreds of people, depending on where you are. But the most prominent feeling in your gut will be one of confusion. What happened and why? You'll get your answers about 20 minutes after the EMP nukes have detonated. That's when the first of Russia's ICBMs lands. Those ICBMs target military command and control centers, along with every major city in the United States. Those cities are targeted for two reasons. They likely also contain military bases, or at least military personnel, and taking out key infrastructure will prevent the United States from quickly recovering COVID-19 the United States over the next hour. If you doubt that number, the Arms Control Association, or ACA, says that Russia has 1,549 strategically deployed nuclear weapons, with 95% of those weapons being continuously ready for combat use. That's according to Valery Gerasimov, Russia's...
That's a hell of a building right there. Can we agree? That's a hell of a building. Like, that is massive.
Chief of General Staff, who made the claim in December 2020, were also subjected to nuclear attacks. Both are nuclear-capable nations have resigned for use.
He's talking about the capabilities of the European nations within the NATO alliance, which honestly, the only ones that are a factor are Germany, France, and Britain. And frankly, even though those ones are factors, they're still not really factors. This is really a US versus Russia consideration.
Follow, with some taking several hours to reach their targets. But no matter how long the missiles take to arrive, there's little the United States can do to stop them. GMD has already been overwhelmed by the initial volley of the sun vicinity. However, those who are a decent distance from the strike zone aren't safe either. Moderate skin burn.
Okay, this is really important. I want you to get a sense of this right now, because what it's about to describe are the ramifications of what will happen when those nuclear payloads touch down. And I do again want you to remember where they're going to touch down. They're going to touch down, of course, in places that Russia suspects we have military infrastructure, be that nuclear weapons, be that military bases, be that headquarters of various military agencies, and then places where we have significant population, New York, San Francisco Bay Area, places like that. So I'm good. Y'all who come to the bird plantation, y'all are good. Everybody else, hey, it's been real. It's been real. Anyways, let me acknowledge some of the folks supporting the work. Shout out to Lady Lola writes, peace to the saints, finally catching alive. Thank you for always being yourself, despite the evil doing their best to censor your platform, always dropping gems and keeping it real. I appreciate that. Got the youngsters supporting the work. That photo looks like an actual minor. Shout out to the young people getting this ism.
And it's practically useless at this point. All that's left for you to do is wait for the blasts. Each strike creates a massive nuclear blast that is almost as hot as the sun's core and instantly incinerates anything and anybody in the immediate vicinity.
So if you're getting a direct hit, and if you're in New York, you will get a direct hit. If you're in Washington, D.C., you will get a direct hit. If you're where the ICMB, if you're anywhere where there's military infrastructure, you're getting a direct hit. You will be incinerated immediately. Okay, now what about the people who don't get a direct hit?
However, those who are a decent distance from the strike zone aren't safe either. Moderate skin burns are still possible, as is death or injury caused by the debris thrown up in the blast. If you're unfortunate to be looking at the blast as it happens, and you aren't killed by the blast itself, your retinas may be seared. At the very least, you'll experience damage to your eyes and possible temporary blindness. Then come the shock waves. Nuclear weapons generate powerful shock waves, leading to instant jumps in pressure. When combined with the dynamic pressure the blast itself causes, The shockwave can reverberate for miles, damaging buildings that are caught in their path. Those shockwaves also have the potential to kill you if you're unlucky enough to be on the ground, tearing through your body and throwing you up into the air. Is there anything you can do to protect yourself at this point? According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, those unfortunate not to be in a shelter or basement should immediately turn away from the blast.
Now, I want you to listen to these recommendations because this is fairly ludicrous. It's almost as ludicrous. I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say it's fairly ludicrous. So shout out to Solo Dolo supporting the work rights. God bless, Marquette. Thank you for the knowledge you give. You are very welcome. So if you are in a direct hit scenario, and most of you will be, you're going to die, full stop. And the good news is you're going to die instantly. That's the good news. The people who are not in a direct hit scenario are not going to die instantly, and that's the bad news. They're going to suffer, and I'm going to describe how they're going to suffer. And remember, they're going to suffer without treatment because emergency services will not exist, I promise you. Even if there are places where emergency services could exist, the people who are supposed to be the emergency services are going to have bigger fish to fry. They're going to have greater concerns than helping strangers, I promise you. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, "Peace of the Saints. I'd rather go out in a flash than suffer radiation, guaranteed." So at some level, being in New York, not a terrible thing. You're going to die pretty quickly, but being one of those people who don't live in New York, maybe you're in Jersey, your ass is going to die in an unfortunate way, I promise you. But the blast itself at the heart is hot as the actual sun, my boy. Not the sunlight, but the sun itself. That's unimaginable. And it said that it'll be so bright that if you were looking at it, you will suffer blindness and damage to the retina. That's quite fantastic. And if you are outdoors, and some of you may very well be, it's called walking around. If you're outdoors, the aftershocks, as they term it, will kill you. The air pressure, the buildings will crumble. And this is not even at the actual site. I don't think they've gotten to the part where the temperature rises dramatically, but let's carry on.
Close their eyes and drop to the floor. Lie face down with your hands under your body and simply wait. You'll likely feel 2 shockwaves pass over you, as well as intense heat. The latter could kill you no matter what you do, though those far enough away from the blast zone should be able to withstand the heat and hopefully not be crushed by debris that results from the shockwaves.
I wish he would have described 2 things. Number one, the temperature as expected, depending on how far away you would be from a payload of, say, 100,000 tons of TNT worth of nuclear explosives. That could have been very instructive. And then, the time difference between when the shock waves would occur, that could have been very informative. But basically, he was saying that the CDC recommends that you lay down, face down with your arms underneath you and close your eyes. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cute. Except that the heat is still going to basically barbecue your ass and turn you into a piece of fried chicken with no seasoning. Extraordinary. That does not sound fun at all. Shout out to you. Like, that's when you're wishing, like, damn, I wish I was in Manhattan. Take me quick, Lord. Take me quick. Shout out to Jalen supporting the work, came in by PayPal. Appreciate you. Shout out to the real one supporting the work, and shout out to the Lady Saints. Shout out to Lady Lola as well.
It's a minuscule defense against what you face, but it's the only thing you can do. And the danger isn't over yet, as you face 2 more problems in the immediate aftermath of the blast: radiation poisoning and firestorms. Any individual who's near the blast site and somehow manages to survive both the initial fireball and the shockwaves the nuke generates will be exposed to extremely high doses of radiation. In many cases, they'll develop acute radiation syndrome. Radiation burns will start to show on the skin within minutes, with other symptoms sometimes taking days or even weeks to appear.
Painful.
These can range from minor skin reddening to full-blown cancer.
Cancer? Are you saying that cancer may come from radiation? Interesting concept you share with us. Truly fascinating. That's something for you guys to remember and think about. Okay. Yeah, cancer and the war, the chemical weapons and cancer. Interesting.
All depending on the distance from the blast, the amount of radiation it released, and even the type of radiation. And you're not safe if you're miles away from the initial blast. Radioactive fallout from the blast can travel through the air for many miles, meaning the simple act of breathing puts you at risk. The same goes for eating food or drinking water. Both will be contaminated due to radioactive fallout. And worst of all, the odds are that there's little you could do about either situation.
No, and that's a really an interesting point. One thing you guys may not have thought of if you're in real estate, you perhaps would have considered this, but most of you guys are on what's called municipal water sources, which is to say that your water comes from the city, which is why you pay a water bill. In my case, for example, I don't pay a water bill because my water comes from deep inside of the earth. We tap into an aquifer. And so at a level, it's much more natural. And also it's controlled wholly by infrastructure here at the Burton Plantation, which makes me a touch safer and probably will allow me to continue drawing water during this kind of a situation. Whereas in your case, if you're using a municipal source and things go left, then basically, when those pipes bust and you're not getting water pressure because the water is just going everywhere because the infrastructure is destroyed, you pretty much are going to be in bad shape. Hopefully you got a lot of water bottles. I actually do have a lot of water bottles myself, but we also are tapping into this aquifer. So we're what you would call, we're Gucci over here. You dig? And that's the importance of, at some level, living off the grid, and another level, being able to care for your basics. Like a lot of times we leave our basics to our actual enemies, and the government, frankly, is your enemy and your enslaver. 2 in 1, unfortunately.
Thanks to Russia's EMP bombs, combined with the devastation caused by the nuclear blasts, emergency services will be slow to respond and will have their hands full dealing with thousands of people in the crisis. That's assuming the energy services are even available. The strikes could destroy them in an instant, with communication also being made difficult by the EMP blasts that have decimated the equipment these vital personnel use. As for firestorms, these will arise in the immediate aftermath of the blast. They're created whenever a large number of smaller individual fires, such as those a nuclear explosion causes, coalesce to form a huge fire. Think of them as flaming hurricanes. The many small fires heat the air to such a degree that they create hurricane-strength winds that pull inwards toward the larger fire those many small fires create. Those larger fires only get stronger because of the air being fed towards them by the wind, fanning the flames until a firestorm occurs. According to Atomic Archive, the blasts you'd likely face would create the perfect conditions for firestorms to occur. They'd certainly occur in areas that contain at least 8 pounds of combustible materials, and there's a strong possibility that half of the structures within the blast zone will all be on fire at the same time.
What he described in that nice AI British accent is so damn dastardly and like scary that you heard it, but you didn't understand. Bro is talking about a hurricane of fire, my boy. That's correct, man. Like, you will be in an inferno. That's correct. It will be hellfire. You will be in Jahannam. You will be suffering at a level that is unimaginable. It's actually unimaginable. It sounds biblical, what is being described. This is insane. This is insane. This is crazy. It's actually crazy.
The burning area will also easily span at least 5 square miles and will likely be even larger. The only thing that could prevent the firestorms from forming is if the wind in the area is above 8 miles per hour. These firestorms will be almost as devastating as the blast itself. For context, the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima created a firestorm that destroyed 4.4 square miles of the city. That demonstrates how strong the heat generated by these fires.
I don't know if he's going to mention it because I haven't had a chance to preview this video, but I want to say that the nuclear bombs that we've developed since then are like 100 times stronger, just for reference.
Storms they engulf large areas of the city, battering them with storm-level winds and igniting practically everything they touch. Glass will melt. Asphalt transforms into a flammable liquid akin to lava.
That was crazy.
And even the metals used to hold up structures may start to melt, depending on how strong the firestorm gets. If you're caught in this firestorm, you have no chance of surviving.
Zero chance.
So if you happen to survive the initial blast and the shock waves it generates, and you're not immediately struck down by the severe radiation poisoning and burns, you only have one option: run. Run as far away from the blast zone as possible to lower the risk.
Bro playing games. Did he say you can run, nigga? Bro, you gotta knock it off with that. Bro said you can run. Basically, you're going to die. Okay, let me keep it a beam with you. There's no hope. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. Mama, I love you. Mama, I love you. bro. Like, don't run. Don't even waste your time running. Don't die in a state of fear. Die in a state of submission to your creator. You're going to die. This is ridiculous. Talking about run. That was literally insane. And it turns out I'm a genius again. That's correct. What was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? The bombs today, they can be hundreds of times more powerful. Hundreds of times. So what he was describing was a very small example of the hellfire that will engulf the planet Earth if these devils in the West decide to proceed with their warlike nature.
Risk of getting swept up in a firestorm. Now, let's say that you survive all of that. As improbable as it may sound, it's possible. A 1,000 kiloton nuclear bomb will cause burns on people up to 7 miles away, and blindness in those who see the blast from up to 53 miles away. If you're on the outskirts of a major city, or you live in a more rural area, there's a chance you could survive the initial blasts. What then? It's only going to get worse from there. The many firestorms that hundreds of nuclear weapons detonating on.
Okay, so the good news is he said if you live in a rural area, Burton Plantation, I'm a genius, you'll survive. You're right. He said, what then? Well, I still have all my water working and not contaminated. I'm 3.5 hours from Atlanta, so my water works and it's not contaminated. I didn't go blind. I'm not suffering those fires of hurricanes. So I'm going to go ahead and say I won that one, my boy. Got a good amount of food out here. We need to start this garden up. But I think I'm pretty solid. I got at least 60 tins of sardines, which are in fact a superfood. So I think it's a good start. It's a very, very good start. Okay. And as I said, all of you who are really a part of this thing of ours, you're welcome at the plantation, of course. If you are a fan, no. Stay where you at. Stay where you at. I don't know you like that. You don't really mess with me.
US soil create would send up huge plumes of smoke into the atmosphere. Adding to that will be all of the ash generated by burning cities. And remember, this smoke and ash isn't just coming from the United States. Russia will be experiencing the same devastation that you see in the US thanks to America's retaliatory strikes. Worse yet, both Britain and France will likely be up in smoke thanks to preemptive Russian strikes. After all, Moscow doesn't want those nuclear-capable nations supporting the United States due to Article 5 of the NATO Charter. All of this ash and smoke, up to 165 million tons of it, rises into the atmosphere and spreads, essentially blanketing the entire northern hemisphere.
Okay, so you guys have heard the term nuclear winter. This is where that term comes from, based on the climatic and the, or shall we say, the environmental impact, shall we say, and also the coldness of the new reality. Anyways, I'll go ahead and take a pause for the cause. If you guys want to keep it going, we can keep it going. It's up to you. It's always your call, balls in your court. If you do want to keep it rolling, send it right here below. We'll carry it on. Otherwise, if you're like, Marquette, I've heard enough about this nuclear holocaust. And I do want to acknowledge one person who says something unmanly. He says, well, why worry about it then if we can't do anything? This is the same guy in jail that, when bro come in his cell, like, hey, man, I'm going to need that butt. He's like, okay, be gentle. Well, that's why I'm here talking about it. That's why we're organizing the SASN. That's why I tell you that we are in revolutionary times. That's why we're building the training and event center. We're bringing together the nucleus of the revolution to take action. Don't be hopeless. That's not manly. Peace to the saints. Let's see if we shall continue. May I acknowledge St. P writes, good afternoon, Mr. Burton. Is this situation inevitable? It is not inevitable, but I would be dishonest if I didn't acknowledge that we've never been nearer during my lifetime with Donald Trump in office, being unpredictable and aggressive. So yes, we are very close. And the reason I decided to speak on this today is because Donald Trump decided to position some nuclear assets closer to Russia. And these strategic positionings are not isolated. There have been a number of other positions taken in the last 4 months or so that have been concerning. So no, it's not inevitable, because if it was, it wouldn't even be worth my breath to have this conversation, but the probability is much higher. And because the result of what would happen is so dire, I have to speak on it and we have to do something. But please do know that when I speak of revolution, these are the kind of things that we're trying to prevent. So many bad things come in concert when you have these kind of devils in power. The destruction of family, the destruction of the natural order, risk to our lives, theft of our tax dollars. If we can get these folks out of power, dislodge them, marginalize them, and make sure that their ideas and ideology does not ail the population, we will solve many problems at once. The gentleman further writes, in your opinion, what would be the most likely scenario outside of a nuclear conflict that can happen in this escalating conflict? Well, the most likely scenario would be that the United States further funds Ukraine, and not only with regards to weaponry, but also starts to fund, and I'm sure America probably has already, their mercenaries. And then America engaging in a limited war on behalf of Ukraine by putting their soldiery in play. And if America were to do that, we would see France, Britain, and Germany do it in concert. I highly doubt that that would happen. And I also doubt that Russia would engage their nuclear doctrine if that happened. May I acknowledge Mr. Brown writes, peace of the saints. I finally caught alive. It's been too long. I'm not doing well, but I know I will be okay. Please keep the work going, big homie. Well, let me tell you the good news, Mr. Brown. The good news is that I'm 100% sure that whatever you're suffering in this moment will come to an end. You will get over it. I absolutely promise that you will. I've already seen it. And maybe you'll endure more suffering in your life. And the measure of you will be based on how well you deal with your challenges. So I wish you well. I encourage you to be happy and positive and know that fortunately for you, you're not experiencing the worst of suffering. If you have internet and you're able to watch this and you have the cognitive abilities to understand what I'm saying, it can't be too bad. So stay positive and this will be over soon. Shout out to Kareem supporting the work again. He writes, keep going, please. Thank you for everything. Saint, thank you. And I appreciate you having been loyal for a long time. I was just thinking about my young boy, Jason Paul, down in Sasson, Miami. I haven't heard from him or about him in a little while. I always wonder about you guys. I always like to stay caught up as best I can. I acknowledge Aaron. He writes, I don't know what happened at the big game conference, but the Yay area Saints came back talking super crazy on the scene. The ism is a beautiful thing. Yes, indeed. And listen, the big game conference was a movie. It was a spiritual experience, highly educational, and of course, very fun. It's an annual thing. I have to limit it to 45 tickets sold. And that's assuming that 2 or 3 people are going to cancel. We cannot sell more than 45 because I host it here at the Burton Plantation. That's the comfortable number of people I can host in my living room. So when those tickets go up for sale many months down the line, Just please know there's only 45. That's it. There will be no more. Don't ask. It was a great time. We're still uploading the football game footage. And for you, your good fortune is we have 12 hours of game. If you'd like to get it, you can go to school.com/Marquette. That's MARQUETT. Click courses or classroom and scroll to the bottom. Big Game Conference. You'll love it. Teaches you everything you need to know about women, from selecting them all the way through to divorce/marriage and children and everything in between. May I acknowledge? Wayne writes, carry on. I'm interested in this topic of Armageddon and a great reset to civilization. May I acknowledge? Aaron writes, first time paying tuition. Wow, shout out to Aaron. He writes, hope to contribute more in the near future. Peace of the Saints. Absolutely. And we hope that you contribute your presence in your local section. We want all of you to be known to one another. The greatest value you have in life are good relationships, I promise you. And so many have experienced such enrichment in their life because of the assassin. Shout out to Sage, came back yet again. I know Sage got to be at a baller alert. I don't know. Actually, the new baller alert. So I got to remember, got to stay locked in mentally. Carrying on.
In a giant umbrella through which the sun's rays can barely penetrate, the atmospheric temperature drops rapidly, with plants also beginning to struggle and eventually dying out because they can't conduct the photosynthesis process. Earth's northern hemisphere enters nuclear winter. The planet has experienced the effects of nuclear winter before, though on a much smaller scale than would be caused by the detonation of hundreds of nuclear weapons throughout the northern hemisphere. Take the eruption of the Indonesian volcano Krakatoa in 1883 as an example. That eruption was so powerful that it sent enough ash into the atmosphere to lower global temperatures by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. That may not seem like much, but the sort of atmospheric temperature change can have remarkable effects. Just 68 years before Krakatoa's eruption, a similar eruption occurred at Mount Tambora. The results of the eruption? The year without summer. In the United States, people reported experiencing temperatures that were between 5 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit lower than usual. Some areas even reported summer snow. The lower temperatures had a massive impact on agriculture, with crops dying due to...
Can I point out to you guys, and this is what gets me mad about the devils. These devils that are among us, they're always talking about climate change, but they're pro-war. You cannot be pro-war and pro-climate change. I remember last time I was in Tokyo, Japan, there's this goofball German girl, and I said, hey, what are you studying? Because I started reading a dumb book on climate change. She's like, oh, yeah, climate change, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great, idiot. How do you feel about the Russia-Ukraine war? She's like, oh, we have to support Ukraine. They have to fight for what's theirs. Okay, exciting. So you're saying prolong the war, kill more Ukrainians, and make sure that we destroy the soil and the earth in the process. The Ukrainians can't win. So all you're doing is extending the amount of time we will be exploding the earth and making sure that there's depleted uranium everywhere and all of these byproducts of warfare. I was like, this is total idiocy. So the devils are devils. Like nothing they think of, nothing they do is good. They are devils and they won't change. Talking about climate change, but they are so for the war in Ukraine and Russia. And the only thing keeping it going is the endless supply of your tax dollars to the Ukrainians who could not otherwise fight. Listen, the fact of the matter is might makes right. Let them lose, because I tell you the funny thing, Ukrainians care nothing about you and I promise you. I know them personally. I remember last time I was in Poland and I went to go meet a Polish chick for dinner. And I was talking to a Ukrainian chick before the Polish chick arrived. I wasn't trying to do anything wild. You heard me? She was there. I was there. And she was basically telling me how she and her boyfriend escaped Ukraine, but her boyfriend escaped conscription and she just escaped, and how they don't really care what's happening in Ukraine. Like they forgot about it. It's like a past life, and how they're trying to milk the system in Poland and make money, and how she's enjoying herself and going to lounges and has recommendations on things I should do. And then when you talk to the Poles, they'll tell you how they're getting tired of the Ukrainians because the Ukrainians are there blood sucking. Some of them don't even want to work. And I'm like, this is interesting. And, admittedly, I've done a lot of business with the Ukrainians over the years. And I can say that they're pretty good software developers, not always the most honest people. I've definitely been cheated by some Ukrainians, and the chicks are 100% gold diggers. They're gorgeous, and they have shape on them too. Shout out. But every last one of them have been gold diggers, not the greatest people. But I say that to say this. Do you think they would try to save you, the American citizen, if something bad were happening to you? Hell nah, Brody. So why all of a sudden do we got to care about them? Because it's not even about them. The American government doesn't even care about them. They care about weakening Russia. Come on now. Come on. Yes, and they're weakening Russia, and they're weakening you and I and the American dollar in the process. Yes, it's a cold, sick world out there.
Frost, and hundreds of thousands of people perishing throughout the world. That's nothing compared to what would happen in the aftermath of a nuclear war. In their book, A Path Where No Man Thought, late astronomer Carl Sagan and atmospheric scientist Richard Turco posit that there are 6 possible classes of nuclear winter, with the one you'd face depending on the scale of the nuclear war between Russia and the United States. In the best case scenario, meaning each country only uses a small part of its nuclear arsenal, a minimal nuclear winter would occur.
Unlikely.
That would mean very little smoke cloud cover and no long-term consequences for the rest of the world. The next case is a marginal nuclear winter, and even at that point, the outlook for the rest of the world would look grim. Temperatures in the northern hemisphere would decline by a few degrees, having a devastating effect on the agricultural centers that are still able to operate after the nuclear blasts. Production would practically grind to a halt as crops die, leading to the famine deaths of millions. According to Sagan and Turco, the deaths resulting from this famine would be approximately equal to the number who died in the blasts. Move up to a nominal nuclear winter, which would occur if between 6,000 and 12,000 nuclear...
I just want you guys to remember that it's so devious that the number of people who died in the direct blast, they're going to be people dying just in the aftermath that will equal that. That's devious. Like this is biblical. Matter of fact, is this in the Bible? Like they didn't prophesy this? Because this is crazy, but it's a significant likelihood. And it has been since the Soviet Union existed. So for a while.
Weapons are detonated, and the temperature drops would reach 18.3 degrees Fahrenheit. The entire northern hemisphere would be blanked with dark skies, as well as experiencing the effects of drought, starvation, and nuclear fallout. Though the smoke clouds would eventually dissipate, the ozone layer would be practically destroyed by the nuclear blasts, resulting in far more solar radiation reaching the Earth's surface. Ironically, this would make the northern hemisphere feel hotter than it was before, with the wild variance in temperatures continuing to wreak havoc on agricultural production. The classes keep getting worse, culminating in the 6th class, extreme nuclear winter. This may only occur if the entire world is engulfed in nuclear war, with the result being that most...
And this is a scenario that's not even worth going through because the entire world will not be involved in nuclear war. So that's pretty unlikely. But I understand as academics, they have to explore every possibility to make sure that they can, fill out the pages of their book. Shout out to Melvin, comes in by PayPal. He writes, tuition, peace of the saints. I've been a patron since 2019. Only regret is not supporting enough. Shout out to Melvin. I appreciate you. And shout out to the loyal ones who have really been rocking with the ism. Some folks, some of my youngsters have been raised on the ism, and that's a beautiful thing. I know that they're strong men. They'll create strong families, and these are the men that our futures all depend on.
What's interesting here is that the nominal nuclear winter caused by the war won't have a huge impact on the southern hemisphere, at least environmentally, with all the major targets, the US, Russia, Britain, and France, being above the equator. All will experience nominal nuclear winter, as will every country in the northern hemisphere regardless of whether or not they're caught in blasts. But that doesn't mean the southern hemisphere will escape unscathed. Though Sagan and Turco suggest there'll be minimal environmental impact below the equator, the social and economic impacts would be enormous. After all, the northern hemisphere is responsible for much of the world's food. The US alone produced 3.03 metric tons of food per capita in 2021. All gone thanks to nuclear winter.
See, this aspect, I think, is misrepresented, which is to say that I think that the global south is fine in terms of being able to produce their own food. Brazil's a significant producer of food. Nigeria used to be food self-sufficient. It can be done, no problem. These are places with fertile lands and significant populations to work them. So I think that'll be fine. But what we need to estimate is how the climate may be altered in those places as well, and the ability of those places to quickly adjust to not having certain types of imports. So that's what's really of interest. But what the speaker in the video is attempting to do is to establish excess importance to the global north, which is to say the European countries. And this is typical. This is, their superiority thing that they've been sticking with for, centuries. So like they like think that they're like critical to the earth when really they're critical to the destruction of the earth. And we might do all right without them. So hopefully their leadership class will be taken out of power, and we can replace them with people who have hearts and decency. But this last bit is hogwash in terms of suggesting that the global south won't be able to provide for itself. Really, the question is, how will their climates and their crops be impacted by these kinds of radical changes in, ecology? Shout to Aaron. He writes, first time paying tuition, hope to contribute more in the near future. Peace of the Saints. Peace of the Saints indeed. Shout to Aaron. KES, what country is that? Someone let me know. May I acknowledge Starry Eye writes, yes, it is in the Bible. The Hebrew Israelites talk about it all the time in the book of blah, blah, blah. It describes the rockets as arrows of fire. Why can't it just describe them as rockets? You don't, like, when you're interpreting things like that's like you're just making that up is what I'm saying. The Bible could literally just describe it as like, nuclear explosions resulting from X, Y, and Z that are coming from a country called Russia and a country called the United States. It could be very specific. So, I mean, that's kind of my point, because let's be real here. When you say arrows of fire, if you look at the Romans and the Greeks, for example, you look at civilizations of antiquity, they literally used arrows of fire. So what makes you think that it's not referring to things that the writers of the Bible would be more familiar with because they existed in antiquity? Again, another reason that Marquettism is for the kids. Marquettism saves lives. Shout out to, and I appreciate the support. Shout out to D. He writes, peace to the saints. John, okay, so on and so forth. Just to name a few, prophesied a nuclear war. Okay, this is literally God's will. You don't have to use literally. That's not the way that word is used. You can say this is truly God's will, but this is not literally God's will. If it was literally, it'd probably be a lot more clear, wouldn't it? So it's truly. Kenyan shillings. Okay, for sure. Shout out to the Kenyans. Carrying on.
The same goes for Canada's 2.84 metric tons, France's 2.4 metric tons, and Russia's 2.22 metric tons, and China's 1.92 metric tons per capita. It would all be lost thanks to nuclear winter, because all of those major food-producing countries are in the Northern Hemisphere. The global economy would also collapse due to the havoc wreaked in the Northern Hemisphere. Russia and the United States would be practically destroyed, as would China. Though not the target of the nuclear blasts, it would be devastated by nuclear winter and the famine it causes. The losses in those countries would impact the Southern Hemisphere enormously. No more support for Africa via the Belt and Road Initiative. No more relying on the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. In the aftermath of nuclear winter, many of Earth's cultural, scientific, and economic capitals will simply cease to exist. In short, you would witness the complete breakdown of society if you were fortunate enough to...
So bro is basically speaking to what has historically been called the white man's burden. This is insanity. Bro's literally talking about the white man's burden. He's like, look, I don't know how the blacks and the Arabs and the Asians and the Latinos will get along without us. I think the whole world will end when we blow ourselves up. It's like, nah, bro, I think things are going just fine, my boy. It's just truly comical.
Survive both the blasts and the nuclear winter that followed. Fortunate may be a misnomer in this instance. Life would no longer resemble anything that you've ever known, but at least you won't be part of the 5 billion people, roughly 63% of the Earth's population, that die as a result of the widespread famines that result from nuclear war. But you'd still face freezing temperatures. In a 2006 study published by the Journal of Geophysical Research, a group of scientists ran a modern climate model test based on US and Russia deploying all of their active nuclear weapons against one another. They concluded that globally, average surface cooling would fall in the 44.6 to 46.4 degree Fahrenheit range. It would be even worse.
Well, that was a bit challenging because I believe he stated both countries are going to deploy all of their active nuclear weapons. And I think that, well, one, is that probable? Maybe not. And then number two, what percentage are estimated to actually, detonate? So, there's a lot of what ifs there. I think what we can agree on without getting too granular is that it would be bad. Very bad. And also, predictably, it'll be the same demographic of people creating death and destruction globally, who's always been creating death and destruction around the whole planet Earth. Shout out to Ishan, writes, peace to the saints. It was a pleasure meeting you in person, Saint. You are the same person on and off camera. We'll need that plug on the suits. I just spent $1,700 on the. Yeah, bro, you got done dirty out there, boy. Here, the salesman had a big smile on his face. Yeah, I bet he did. Hey, be thrifty, man. I encourage thrift. Here, thank you for the high level game and see you soon, Master Saint. Yeah, a shout out to the gentleman being very prosperous. We love to see it. Hopefully you're able to come on that drip trip. If not, shoot me a message. And if you're heading out that way, I'll definitely give you our contacts. They'll treat you really well out there and you'll save a bundle for sure. You ain't gonna be spending $1,700. That's true murder. And the worst part about that kind of murder is that I already know they ain't tailoring like my guys are tailoring, but it get like that. It's how it is every now and then. Live and learn. I acknowledge Kane via Venmo. He writes, will the People's Republic of China and the Democratic Republic of Korea be doing anything other than reclaiming Taiwan in this scenario? Well, I think that China will significantly be affected due to their proximity to Russia. I think Korea will be in better shape. And certainly Taiwan would eventually be reclaimed. But of course, because the United States will be in total disrepair, that'll be the complete fall and disintegration of the American empire and its operation of its 750 bases around the planet Earth. So there's just no doubt that that would unravel straight away. Ladies and saints, it has been a pleasure to have this time to fellowship with you all on this most serious of topics, but absolutely critical. I commend all of you who are serious enough to think about these bigger questions and to prepare, most importantly, for the safety of yourself and your families. I thank you for your ties to tuition, your ongoing loyalty and support, especially as we attempt to build this training and events center, which will be our next big thing organizationally. And let us end this with our tradition, the Creed of the Assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you. The Creed of the Assassin. I am going to be who I truly am because I am remarkable. I'm going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Until next time, peace of the saints.